Agenda before us this evening, I'd like to go ahead and convene the Committee of the Whole meeting April 13th and ask for Marcia to return to the room.
Take the roll.
Will be just a moment. We're anticipating moving into executive session during this Committee of the Whole hour, and then we'll be convening the regular meeting of City Council at 6 p.m. this evening. Our city clerk is returning to the room, and we will have the roll call for our Committee of the Whole momentarily.
Are you ready for me?
Yes, I am. I apologize.
Jacobson? Fanouken?
Here.
Lash?
Here.
Snow?
Here.
Naylor?
Here.
Baker? O'Leary? Ray?
Present.
6
Thank you. I did receive word from Alderman Baker that he is out of town and does not plan to attend the meeting this evening. I would, at this point, entertain a motion to recess for executive session of City Council with approval to hold discussion of personnel as provided for on 5 ILCS 120/2C1, discuss collective bargaining as provided for in 5 ILCS 120/2C2, and discussion of pending or imminent litigation as provided for in 5 ILCS 120/2C11. Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a
Second.
and seconded? With that, I'll ask for a roll call.
Jacobson? Fanouken?
Yes.
Lash?
Yes.
Snow?
Yes.
Naylor?
Yes.
Baker? O'Leary?
Yes.
Ray?
Yes.
6
Thank you. We'll move to the large conference room. The regular meeting of City Council, April 13th, and ask for a roll call. It's 6:39. Roll call, please.
Jacobson? Fanouken?
Here.
Lash?
Here.
Snow?
Here.
Naylor?
Here.
Baker? O'Leary?
Here.
Ray?
Here.
6
Thank you. And although Alderman Jacobson is not in the room at the present time, he is expected this evening. Alderman Baker contacted me earlier in the day indicating he's out of town and is not expected in attendance this evening. With that, let me ask Officer Sullivan to come forward. Please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, I want to begin this evening with some contemplation time on the devastating tornado that impacted communities in our county and surrounding area. Our thoughts are with those affected in Fairdale and Rochelle. Thank you to our first responders who make up the Mutual Aid Box Alarm, MABUS 6th Division for the support given the night of April 7th. And thank you to the Public Works employees and others who collected donations on April 11th. Our Public Works employees stand ready to provide further support to the infrastructure repairs in the community of Fairdale. This will be the second-tier response. When those infrastructure needs are identified, our city manager is prepared to expedite our Public Works employees to assist. The Public Works deployment will begin as early as Tuesday and Wednesday this week. We are sending 2 tandem dump trucks to Rochelle to haul storm debris. We're facilitating Orland Park's request or inquiry of our city manager to assist where they may be able to. Our city manager put out the announcement Friday of the city providing a collection site for needed items. I witnessed a straight truck loaded with items throughout Saturday morning behind City Hall. I'm told there are additional donations that are present in a garage here at City Hall. It represents the generosity and the heart of this community responding to the need. The call is presently for gift cards and cash donations to support those people affected. Emery, I'm not sure where individuals could contact to make those donations.
I don't know the exact location now, but we'll make sure to post it on Facebook and put it on the website.
Excellent.
The Village of Kirkland website has a link to a GoFundMe account set up by Alpine Bank.
Thank you.
That's for the monetary donations, and it said that the gift cards were being accepted at the Kirkland Fire Department.
Very good. Thank you. And thank you to all in this initial response. We will provide ongoing support as the community of Fairdale faces a long period of rebuilding their lives. And I just want to thank citizens, I want to thank city employees for that response and the efforts that have gone into that. With that, I'd like to move to the special items. We have, thank you. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Roll call.
Jacobson.
Yes.
Fanouken.
Yes.
Lash.
Yes.
Snow.
Yes.
Naylor.
Yes.
Baker. O'Leary.
Yes.
Ray.
Yes.
7 aye.
Thank you. With that, moving to special items, then introduction of Assistant Transportation Planner. I'll turn to Engineer Liskowski.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce you to Jessica Heinck. Jessica joined DSATS to fill the role of Assistant Transportation Planner in the Transportation Division in Public Works Department. Before coming to DeKalb, she worked as a research analyst and project coordinator for 5 years with the College of Urban Planning and Public Affairs at the University of Illinois at Chicago. While at UIC, she collaborated with the UIC Urban Transportation Center, the Urban Institute of Washington, D.C., and the UIC Center for Clinical and Translational Science. Ms. Heinck will focus on public transit, bicycle planning, and grants, and in the future she looks forward to collaborating with Transvac and Northern Illinois University to identify opportunities to improve the transit system.
Thank you.
And I'd just like to say thank you so much for the opportunity, and I look forward to working with you all.
Why don't you approach the dais and we'll go.
Hello, Jessica.
Thank you.
I had the pleasure earlier today of meeting Ronaldo Hernandez. I'd ask Chief Lowry to come forward this evening for the swearing-in ceremony. And our city clerk.
Good evening, council. Thank you for this opportunity. Welcome the community and members of the DeKalb Police Department as well. What I'd like to do is momentarily I'll call Officer Ronaldo Hernandez, Ray Hernandez up, along with Rachel Beach, his fiancee. But just before that, I want to just give you an idea of how this is going to go. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Ray and where he's been in his life and some of his accomplishments. But I want you to know that after 3 years in the United States Army and 36 years in law enforcement, it's almost like witnessing the birth of a child when someone new comes on the job. And that might not be the best analogy, so I'm sorry about that. But it truly is. And so it is a great pleasure, and I know, you know, in the budget process you approve these positions, so we are grateful. And we hope the addition of Ray coming onto our police department will help continue to take us down the road of making our city an even safer place. Having said that, I'm going to talk a little bit about Ray, and then I'm going to, his oath will be administered by our city clerk, and then I'll finish up. So I would like to ask Ray and Rachel to come forward, please, and join me up here by the podium. Let me tell you a little bit about Officer Ray Hernandez. Ray has been a part of the DeKalb County community since August of 2003, when he first attended NIU as an undergraduate. In May of 2007, Officer Hernandez graduated from NIU with a Bachelor of Arts degree in Communication Studies. Upon completion of his bachelor's, Officer Hernandez pursued an advanced communications degree at Roosevelt University and graduated with a Master's of Science in December 2008. Officer Hernandez began his law enforcement career with the Northern Illinois University Police Department in September of 2012. He attended the Suburban Law Enforcement Academy, where he served as the vice president for his class. Officer Hernandez's initiatives and familiarity with the NIU community led him to collaborative partnerships and critical leadership roles with the Housing Education Liaison Program as well as the Greek Liaison Program. In July of 2014, Officer Hernandez was selected for a specialty role with NIU PD's Community-Oriented Policing Strategy Unit, the COPS unit. In this role, Officer Hernandez provided educational programs for the NIU public, while also proactively addressing street crime as well as drug enforcement. Officer Hernandez additionally collaborated with neighboring agencies, the DeKalb Police Department being one of those, and assisted narcotics operations that led to the arrest of multiple drug dealers throughout NIU, the city of DeKalb, and DeKalb County. Officer Hernandez has received multiple physical fitness awards during his time at NIU PD and has been formally recognized for his rapid response to high-risk calls and situations. Officer Hernandez resides in Sycamore and will soon begin a life with his fiancée, Rachel, and his future stepson, Carson. Going forward, Officer Hernandez, I'm speaking for you, sorry brother, it's the last time it'll happen. Going forward, Officer Hernandez is excited about embarking on a new journey with the DeKalb Police Department while continuing to uphold the values of leadership and service to the city of DeKalb. With that, I'd like to ask the clerk to come forward and administer the oath.
I, Reynaldo Hernandez, having been appointed to the position of police officer in the city of DeKalb, county of DeKalb, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of Illinois, and I will faithfully discharge the duties of police officer to the best of my ability.
Welcome aboard. Congratulations. As you can see at this time, Rachel is going to pin him. I usually say really hard so it draws blood, but that might be inappropriate tonight.
Approach with that.
Again, congratulations, Ray.
Welcome.
Congratulations.
While Ray is shaking hands and making his way around the dais and the staff tables, I'd like to say to him and Rachel, welcome to the DeKalb Police family. I'd also like to say to him, there's only 4 things that I expect of your service to the DeKalb Police Department, and they are as follows. The first is to honor your oath. And as a police officer, I fully expect you to honor your oath and serve our community. I often try to make that reminder to everyone who serves at the DeKalb Police Department that the first and foremost thing that Ray needs to do is make sure he embraces that oath, and I know he will. The second thing I'd like Ray to do is focus on the mission. Sometimes during our careers, it can be difficult, and there may be things that draw us away from what we were well intended for. I know that he will focus on the mission. The third thing I'll ask you to do is embrace service over self. It's a hard concept today, but I would ask you to do that as well. And the last thing I would say is, and I hope this doesn't come for a long, long time, that when you do decide to leave us, hopefully getting your retirement and well-deserved pension, I'd ask you to look back on your career and say to yourself that you have truly left us better than you found us. I hope you can do all 4 of those things for us, Ray. Thank you very much for allowing us the privilege to bring this before council. Welcome to the family.
Thank you, Chief. I'd like to turn to Diana Halst with DeKalb County Youth Service Bureau for a report on human service funding. Diana?
Thank you. DeKalb County Youth Service Bureau has been serving the DeKalb County youth for over 40 years. We provide early intervention and prevention programs that is geared to help alleviate further stressors that could result in further juvenile delinquency and the cost involved with court involvement and the stress on the community, and also more intensive mental health services. Between 43% and 50% of our individuals each quarter come from actually the city of DeKalb. So your grant funding here is very essential to our services. Specifically, our most important program here is our youth and family counseling. Our clinicians are specifically trained to work with youth in a systematic way along with their families and their communities and their schools to help provide support and help them grow their developmental assets and their resources and their ability to relate and communicate with one another. During this past fiscal year, we've had 34 families of Hispanic origin that we've served, and we do have a part-time bilingual staff on staff. Our early intervention in drug and alcohol use has also expanded to the middle schools as well. We found that that is a place where the service was actually well needed. We've worked with the schools there for referrals and provided those groups not only at YSB but also in the middle schools. Our Runaway and Locked Out Youth Program is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It is our crisis program that serves individuals when the youth is refusing to go home or a teenager has been locked out and the family is refusing to let them in. We actually have 2 clinicians right now that are on one of those such crisis calls where the student had told their teachers that they are refusing to go home. A lot of our referrals not only come from the schools, but also come from the court system as well. For first-time juvenile offenders that are referred to us, we do an early risk assessment to see what has led them to participate in this behavior that has got them arrested in the first place. And then we provide referrals and linkages to other services to help support them, whether that be alcohol and drug intervention, anger management, or other such services. And we also provide case management for their court-ordered community services that they have to get done. Through that, we have our volunteer program, and one of our things that we've worked on this past year is actually the Mayor's Garden. We've partnered with DeKalb County Community Gardens to help put that garden together, and we're going to continue to weed it, plant it, and harvest it. Any questions?
Diana, my experience goes back to when Youth Service Bureau first formed, was a drop-in center in the basement room of the old St. Mary's Hospital on Fisk Avenue. How many staff do you have at this point?
Currently, we have 9.
9 staff. And you're housed in the 330 Grove Street
Correct,
building that the city provides space for.
correct.
And I just want to thank you for your leadership and guidance of that important program in our community. I had the pleasure of serving on the youth service network that's in DeKalb County, I think over 20-some years, and YSB is a significant player at that table. So thank you for those efforts.
Thank you.
Other questions from council?
Questions?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for the report, Diana. And I apologize, is there anyone in the room from Nguzo Saba Men's Club? I'm not seeing Derek Smith present. Okay. I'll move on then. I have several proclamations this evening, and I just ask your indulgence to bear with me as we process a number of proclamations. The first of which is recognizing Sexual Assault Awareness Month. Whereas Sexual Assault Awareness Month calls attention to the fact that sexual violence is widespread and impacts every person in this community. And whereas rape and sexual assault and sexual harassment harm our community. And statistics show 1 in 5 women, 1 in 71 men will be raped at some point in their lives. And whereas child sexual abuse prevention must be a priority to confront the reality that 1 in 6 boys and 1 in 4 girls will experience a sexual assault before the age of 18. And whereas young people experience heightened rates of sexual violence, youth ages 12 to 17 are 2.5 times as likely to be victims of rape or sexual assault. And whereas on campus, 1 in 5 women and 1 in 16 men are sexually assaulted during their time in college. Therefore, we must work together to educate our community about sexual violence prevention, supporting survivors, and speaking out against harmful attitudes and actions. When we actively get involved, we can prevent sexual violence. The first step is increasing education, awareness, and community involvement. It's time for all of us to take action to create a safer environment for all. I join advocates and communities across the country in taking action to prevent sexual violence. April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, but each day of the year is an opportunity to create change for the future. I hereunto put my signature, John A. Ray, Mayor, City of DeKalb. Is anyone here from Safe Passage to receive this? We'll forward this to that organization. The second proclamation is National Public Safety Telecommunications Week. Whereas emergencies can occur at any time that require police, fire, or emergency medical services, and whereas when an emergency occurs, the prompt response of police officers, firefighters, and paramedics is critical to the protection of life and preservation of property. And whereas the safety of our police officers and firefighters is dependent upon the quality and accuracy of information obtained from citizens who telephone the City of DeKalb Police Fire Communications Center. And whereas public safety telecommunications are the first and most critical contact our citizens have with emergency services. And whereas public safety telecommunicators are the single vital link for our police officers and firefighters by monitoring their activities by radio, providing them information and ensuring their safety. And whereas public safety telecommunicators of the City of DeKalb have contributed substantially to the apprehension of criminals, suppression of fires, and treatment of patients. And whereas each telecommunicator has exhibited compassion, understanding, and professionalism during the performance of their job in the past year, now therefore be it resolved that the mayor and the city council of the City of DeKalb, Illinois declare the week of April 12th through the 18th, 2015 to be National Public Safety Telecommunications Week in the City of DeKalb in honor of the men and women whose diligence and professionalism keep our city and citizens safe. I'll ask Chief Lowry for comment.
Coming to you as Communications Coordinator Latoya Mars, who's in charge of our Communications Division. I just wanted to make a few comments in regard to our telecommunicators in general in honor of Telecommunicators Week. First, thank you, Council, for honoring those who serve in telecommunications. It's often a forgotten or invisible group that work within the police department. But to give you an idea of what 2014 looked like for communications, during that time, over 44,000 events were processed through communications. Also during that time, over 19,000 911 calls were processed through communications that has an authorized staff of 11 full-time employees. To give you an idea what that translates to in the real world of policing, handling calls for service on the road, that means that the DeKalb Police Department has a higher call per officer ratio annually than Elgin, Aurora, or Joliet. I'd like to once again thank you, and I'd like to acknowledge the hard work that the men and women in dispatch do for our police department. Thank you.
With that, let me move to the Administrative Professional Day proclamation, April 22nd, 2015. Whereas administrative professionals play an essential role in coordinating the office operation of businesses, government, educational institutions, and other organizations, and whereas the work of administrative professionals today requires advanced knowledge and expertise in communications, computer software, office technology, project management organization, customer service, and other vital office management responsibilities. And whereas Administrative Professional Day is observed annually in workplaces around the world to recognize the important contributions of administrative staff, support staff, and is sponsored by the International Association of Administrative Professionals. And whereas Administrative Professionals Day 2015 is focused on honoring the office professionals who make offices work and reflects the integral and central role that office professionals play in modern business. Therefore, be it resolved that I, John Ray, Mayor of the City of DeKalb, Illinois, and the City Council do hereby proclaim that April 22nd, 2015 shall be known as Administrative Professionals Day, saluting the valuable contributions of administrative professionals in the workplace and encourage all citizens to join me in this worthy observance. Apologize. Penny?
Mayor, Council, again, thank you. Representing all administrative support personnel for the city is our administrative specialist, Penny Meyer. I'd like to say, once again, you acknowledging their efforts is acknowledging an unsung hero or unsung heroes. And on their behalf, for all the city departments, and I'll especially speak for the police department, thank you for taking the time to honor them.
Thank you, Gene. The next proclamation is recognizing Earth Day, April 22nd. Whereas Earth Day is a time to celebrate the goal of inspiring environmental awareness and encouraging the conservation, protection, and appreciation of our natural resources. And whereas it is the responsibility of each of us to safeguard the environment by recognizing that all human life depends upon the earth and one another for our mutual existence, well-being, and development. And whereas the City of DeKalb is committed to balancing the economic, environmental, and social systems to create and sustain a positive quality of life for future generations. And whereas the concerned citizens of the City of DeKalb are dedicated to the protection and preservation of our environment, therefore be it resolved that I, John Ray, Mayor, City of DeKalb, Illinois, and the City Council do hereby proclaim April 22nd as Earth Day in the city of DeKalb and urge all our residents, businesses, and institutions to use this time to celebrate the earth and commit to building a sustainable and green economy and to encourage others to undertake similar actions. John? Thank you very much. Yep. At this point, I'd like to turn to Alderperson Lash to read the proclamation for Arbor Day.
Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees, and whereas this holiday, called Arbor Day, was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska, and whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world, and whereas trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable resource giving up paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. And whereas trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community. And whereas trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. Therefore, be it resolved that I, John Ray, Mayor of the City of DeKalb, do hereby proclaim Friday, April 24th, 2015 as Arbor Day in the City of DeKalb, and call upon all citizens to support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands. And further, I urge all citizens to plant and care for trees to gladden the heart and promote the well-being of this and future generations.
Thank you, Kristen. John, do you want to come forward and receive that proclamation? And then- Thank you, John. I'll ask, is Joan Sage Joan? My next proclamation is recognizing Comcast Cares Day, April 25th, 2015. Whereas Comcast Cares Day is a celebration of service and has become the nation's largest single-day corporate volunteer effort that brings employees, families, friends, and community partners together for a common purpose and mission. And whereas Comcast is celebrating its 14th Comcast Cares Day and has reached important milestones, including 3 million volunteer hours and 500,000 volunteers nationwide since Comcast Cares Day started in 2001. And whereas Comcast Cares Day promotes a spirit of corporate responsibility thanks to the hard work, dedication, and service of hundreds of Comcast volunteers. And whereas Hope Haven provides shelter, meals, and life skill programs for homeless individuals and families while preparing them for rehousing for people in the DeKalb area. And whereas Comcast and Hope Haven will provide volunteers to paint, clean, and do landscaping at the Hope Haven facility on April 25th. Therefore, I, John Ray, Mayor of the City of DeKalb, Illinois, do hereby proclaim April 25th, 2015 as Comcast Cares Day. Joan, would you like a comment?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and council folks and everyone in the audience. We are delighted to have a Comcast Cares project right here in DeKalb, and I have with me Bruce Rucker and Diana Brown, who are heading up the project here. We'd love to have you join us. We're really delighted that we're doing this at Hope Haven. The residents have all signed up as volunteers. We so far have 137 people that will be working on this project. So if you'd like to come and join us, we have, Diane has a t-shirt for the mayor and anyone else who comes to help. We have t-shirts and we'll have lunch, and we've gotten quite a few donations from Bruce Menards. A lot of local businesses are helping so that we can give more money toward a grant. What happens after we get this project done is grants are given based on the number of employees. And the more things we can have donated, the greater the amount of the grant. So please come and join us, and thank you so much for the proclamation.
Thank you, Joan. At this point, I'll turn to Ron Naylor for the last proclamation to WNIJ 60-year anniversary.
Yes, proclamation recognizing 60 years of WNIJ, whereas WNIJ and classical WNIU are important members of the community in DeKalb, and whereas WNIJ and classical WNIU support lifelong learning and engagement among listeners and the broader community, and whereas WNIJ has been a City of DeKalb institution for 60 years and celebrates its anniversary this month. And whereas WNIJ and classical WNIU provide quality programming that informs, educates, and inspires civic participation, and whereas WNIJ and classical WNIU engage with artists, audiences, and communities to provide diverse programming reflective of a wide range of experiences and perspectives, and whereas WNIJ and classical WNIU have a proud history of service, advocacy, and civic engagement, and therefore, I, John A. Ray, Mayor of the City of DeKalb, do hereby proclaim my support for WNIJ and classical WNIU and the indispensable role the stations have in our community. In witness thereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the City of DeKalb affixed this 13th day of April 2015. Congratulations to WNIJ.
Is anyone present from the radio station? We'll forward that to Stacy. Thank you. I see Jerry Wright has entered the room. Jerry, are you here to report for Nguzo Saba? Yes. Okay. I'd like to back up to that Nguzo Saba Men's Club annual report. I'll turn to Jerry Wright at this time. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry.
All right. Well, what I've given you is the annual report from the Nguzo Saba Men's Club of DeKalb. And the report is basically talking about the basketball mentoring program that we conduct each summer here in DeKalb for 8 weeks at Anderson Hall at NIU. We've been NIU has been gracious enough to give us the gym in the summer, so we're able to function a basketball mentoring program. Now, the basketball mentoring program is where we use basketball to just get kids in off the street. In the summer, there are a few activities for youth, and so we use basketball as a hook to get them in, and then we have workshops and things we do. We have a girls and boys program. Last year we had, I think it was 174 kids in the program, ranging from age 5 to 18. So we take in kindergarten kids, which is a challenge, and we have high school kids. We have fewer seniors, probably just the freshman, sophomore levels we deal with at the basketball mentoring program. I want you to know that we do collaborate with some of the other organizations in the community, specifically with a lot of the NIU organizations. The Black Male Initiative has been really great in sending students over to work with our program and volunteer to help with mentoring some of the kids. We match them up with a group of kids that they can carry on relationships outside of the camp. The camp is conducted from 5 to 10 p.m. Monday through Thursday for 8 weeks starting at the end of June, giving them 1 week out of school, and then we start the program till the first week in August. And so it's been a great program. I don't actively participate anymore. I have been working with the basketball mentoring program since 1990. Now I'm pretty much an administrator, just making sure they have all the equipment and personnel that they need. But Derek is the day-to-day person at the camp. He has been since 1990. So, and so it's been a great program. We've tried to add some new nuances, and we're still searching for funds for the program. So, if you have any questions, I don't know. I have most of the stuff in front of me.
Jerry, how large is your board of directors?
We have 4 on the board of directors.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Other questions from council? Seeing none, I'll thank you for the report, Jerry.
Thank you.
Appreciate the service. Alderman Neal.
Just a good report. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Okay, moving to our next presentation is from Elwood House for their annual presentation. I'll turn to Brian Reese. Brian?
Hello, thank you. My name is Brian Reese. I'm the Executive Director of Elwood House Association. And today I wanted to speak to you about the Elwood Nearing House. And I brought about 6 slides along just to give everyone visuals of what it is that we're talking about. This is one of the historic sites at the Elwood House Museum. We have a total of 7 historic structures on 10 acres. If you'll remember back about 3 years ago, we did not have the additional 2 acres and 2 historic sites. The Elwood Nearing House that I present here is a 6,000 square foot building that we added in very late of 2011 and just opened to the public last year. What you're looking at is the north side of the home, and it's a property that the Elwoods themselves called Elcourt, but when we took it over, we named it the Elwood Nearing House to honor the Elwood family that built it, and also the Nearings that cared for it over the years. For some 70 years, it was a private residence, and Mrs. Nearing donated it to Elwood House Association in 2011 after doing quite a bit of significant restoration. However, there's always more restoration to be done, so that's what we're talking about here. And just so you know, that little inset is a detail of stained glass from the main hall inside the home. Exquisite stained glass in the house. The next slide I know is a little bit difficult to see, but it's one of my favorite photographs in our collection. The museum itself has a collection of about 7,000 artifacts, many of which are photographs. But if you look on the right-hand side of the photograph, you'll see the Elwood Mansion from about 1900 and the newly built Elwood Nearing House standing there way off to the left. And what it is that we've done here over these last few years is brought this property back together. In this photograph, there's a road that divides the property that no longer exists. That's been gone for a number of years. But what we're doing is we're bringing that Elwood Nearing House back into our state, bringing on that 10 acres of property. And saving it really for the future. I just want to give you some details about visitation for the entire Elwood Museum campus. This is for 2014, for last year. 3,400 people came to our site to take tours of the historic property in 2014. 3,000 attended free events such as Memorial Day Ice Cream Social. We have free, visitor center access. A number of people just kind of wandering around the gardens and the parks. 2,400 people attending weddings, facility rentings, parties, as a way to experience the site and be surrounded by history, essentially. So total attendance in 2014 is 8,860 that we can actually count. Now, I can tell you, I look out my window each morning, and there are people, walking through the park, walking their dogs, hanging out on park benches, students reading. It's quite an active park. So we count what we can, and then we just kind of guess for the rest of those numbers. But what I am reporting to you is the 8,860 that we actually can count. What we're really talking about here today is TIF funds, and one of the projects that we've done is create an accessible site. What you're seeing here is a very vibrant photograph, a little too contrasty with the magentas and the reds here, but what you're seeing is an accessible ramp to bring guests up to the first floor of the home. Again, it's a 6,000 square foot home. The first floor itself is 3,000 square feet, so all of that first floor is accessible. Tours, of course, are being operated through there, but programs as well. You know, we're kind of creating and defining new music and arts programs within that space, keeping them pretty kind of tight as far as what we're interpreting and how we're engaging with our audience, but it's been really kind of unique experiences. Most of them are free. Sometimes we charge a small amount of money for material supplies. This is a photograph of our bioswale, and this was added on. This is actually about 175-foot kind of boomerang of garden space, and it's basically water retention. But we've planted it with native plants, and kind of one of the benefits of this, and I'm going to show you the next slide, is a benefit to the monarch population. Now, many of you know that monarch butterflies have been declining, like 80–90% decline over the last few years. We're fortunate that with this bioswale and the amount of milkweed that we're putting in there and other places on the estate, we're bringing our population back anyway, the DeKalb population. Last year we did have caterpillars of monarch butterflies in the bioswale, so that's good signs. So of course we're into interpreting history, of course, but bringing nature along with it. It's a large park and there's a lot to do. And this slide shows you the Berg Garden. So this is a private donation to the site, but I also bring it here just because you can see at the corner of the photograph a roof that needs work. So one of our new or next TIF-funded projects will be the replacement of that roof. I will tell you that I get calls constantly of people saying, when are you going to fix that roof? And I say, we're in process. We are in process. So coming up for this year, we have additional parking that we're adding. We have to extend that bioswale just a little bit more to take care of rain runoff from that parking, and that roof will be something that we work toward. So we're using a mix of private dollars, funds that's raised through programs and events, things like Wine on the Terrace. Some of you know some of our kind of higher ticket items that pay for restoration work. We're also using an endowment provided by the Elwood family that really helps out a lot to get us through the year. So it takes all of these resources to reinvigorate the site, and as many of you know, because you've heard me over the last 3 years, this takes time, and it was great of City Council to say that, we have this 5 years of TIF funding, $75,000 annually, to reinvigorate the site. So that's exactly what we're doing. So I'm here to answer any questions, and I certainly want to thank you for everything you've done.
Questions of Brian? Seeing none, I'd like to thank you for a good report, Brian, and thank you for the service through Elwood House and Nearing House.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Turning to citizen comments, I've got Ms. Chronopoulos registered. I'm assuming with the consent agenda remaining intact, you wish to speak to item F6. I'll turn to you at this point. Resolution to hire GovHR.
What that is, oh, okay, all right. I see
Do you
what
wish
you're
to
saying.
speak to that topic?
Yeah, actually, on something that's not related to anything,
Well, I see you registered for
Yes,
G1 through 6 and F6.
that's correct, because those were on
At this
the
point,
agenda.
let me turn to you for comment if you wish to make public comment, but also incorporate item F6.
I see what you're saying. You're incorporating what's on the consent agenda under regular
Correct.
comments from the floor. Gotcha, okay. So I'll just do the
I'll give you 6 minutes.
Nah, I won't even need 3. I've learned in my old age to pare down, more or less. This is not related to the agenda. This is the old issue, the minutes issue. I feel like the Minute Maid. This is in regards to, and I have left some documentation with the city clerk about the February 9th minutes, and the whole idea for bringing those to council's attention so often was to see if there could be some kind of a change to the one particular item of interest, which was the contract with Civic Plus. Had it not been for the previous consent agenda item where the minutes were on there as revised minutes, which prompted me to look at those a little more closely, I would not have found a bevy of errors in those minutes. And those, again, are the ones that I've given to the city clerk in various forms, and I think I've kept a couple of you posted, especially Alderman Snow. And one of the primary items there was to bring again to the attention of council and the public the question of where the settlement agreement was discussed by the council, because that seems to be center in that entire issue. It's still not clear. It may be beating a dead horse, but nevertheless, if that item should not have been discussed in executive session and it was never brought up to open session, that's something that needs to be clarified for the public. And also, in regards to that, when you go online to look at the videos, sometimes, and it's probably my computer because it doesn't have a special kind of a program, you can't move the cursor rapidly enough to go forward or go back. It takes forever. You have to have a special program to do that. So I thought it would be really good to contact the IT people. And I don't know, council, if you knew this, but you could actually burn a DVD. You could ask the IT department to burn a DVD for you for a video, so then you can just, it would be a lot easier to watch. Were you aware of that
Yes.
you could do that?
Yeah.
Well, were you aware that all you had to do was just ask the IT and they would do that for you? But when I did that, I was told that you had to file a FOIA in order to do that. Were you aware of that? I guess not. Well, I don't know. I found that kind of odd. And any questions on that at all?
No. Proceed.
Okay, and it's F6 then that you wanted me to?
Yes.
Okay, and that is the item that the council is going to be talking about, expending $17,500 to hire a public works director. It makes no sense to me at all. There were options in the backup, option provided by the city manager, and option 1 was to approve. Option 2 was to not approve. Option 3 was to approve sections of it, and I think there should probably be another option, and that's for the council to direct the city manager to do the hiring process. City manager has a full staff, and that is primarily what the city manager should be doing, is hiring the staff. I don't see why you have to hire another firm to do that. So I guess that's all the items for now. The
Okay.
others do appear on your agenda, and hopefully you can look into that FOIA issue as to why somebody has to file a FOIA to get something that they're willing to pay for.
My understanding of the requirement for FOIAs to be filed, and City Attorney Frieders, you may augment my comments, but my observation would be it formalizes the request process. Rather than the city just passing out information willy-nilly to individuals that might request it, it gives us a formality and a documentation of who's received the information. Okay, thank you, Bessie. Moving to consent agenda, is there a desire on anyone's part to remove items from consent? Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. I'll ask for a roll call.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Lash,
Yes.
Snow,
Yes.
Naylor,
Yes.
Baker. O'Leary.
Yes.
Jacobson.
Yes.
Ray.
Yes.
7-0.
Okay. And then I will ask for a motion to approve via omnibus vote the items presented in consent agenda. Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Lash.
Yes.
Snow.
Yes.
Naylor.
Yes.
Baker. O'Leary.
Yes.
Jacobson.
Yes.
Fanouken.
Yes.
Ray.
Yes.
7-0.
Thank you. Moving to the next item, ordinance 2015-17, adopting a pay and compensation study plan for non-bargaining unit city employees and temporarily superseding the provisions of Chapter 3 City Administration. And I would ask at this point for a motion to receive and file.
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion, then I'll turn to City Manager Gora.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. First thing, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to provide an overview on the background information and the timeline that brought us here on this topic. There's a little background. At the March 24th, 2014 City Council meeting, so over a year ago, the council approved moving forward on a request for proposal for a pay, compensation, and classification study. The RFP was broken down into 3 parts. The first part, in today's discussion, was for a pay and compensation study for non-bargaining unit employees. The last compensation study for non-bargaining unit employees was conducted in 2003, which is right around 12 years ago. The second part of the RFP was broken down to job descriptions for all employees. While some of the job descriptions have been updated, others have not been updated since 1998, or 17 years ago. The city's job description should be updated to ensure uniformity as well as compliance with applicable laws such as the Americans with Disabilities Act. The third part of the RFP was broken down into a performance management system for non-bargaining unit employees. The performance evaluation system was last revised in 2006, or 9 years ago. The city received 6 proposals for the study. At the January 14th, 2014 City Council meeting, the council authorized entering into an agreement with Sikich to perform the pay, compensation, and classification study. I went back as part of preparation and looked at Sikich's original proposal, and I thought what they put in their original proposal was very concrete and applies to what we're talking about today. In their proposal, they state, a key element of a successful organization is its compensation system, design, and administration. Competitive salaries help to ensure that the organization will retain the talent that has contributed to its success. Equally important, competitive salaries allow the organization to attract top-quality candidates, thus ensuring the organization's future success. Our team, meaning Sikich, understands the demands placed on Illinois municipalities to maximize scarce resources while using those limited resources to attract and retain high-performing staff. Now I want to fast forward to today's presentation. Sikich has completed the first part of the study dealing with pay and compensation for non-bargaining unit employees. Greg Kuhn and Christy Musser are here from Sikich today to make a presentation on how the study was conducted as well as key recommendations of the study. First, I want to provide an outline though. Then I'll turn the presentation over to Greg Kuhn. After Dr. Kuhn's presentation is complete, I will outline the implementations costs, which was included in your memo that's in the packet. Afterwards, City Attorney Dean Frieders will explain the implementation as it relates to Chapter 3 of the Municipal Code. I'll have a couple closing comments, and then we'll then answer the questions the mayor and the council may have. So with that, I think at this point, I'll add a couple more comments, and then I think I will turn it over to Greg. So just a few more comments. For collective bargaining units, every 3 years, the city is compelled to conduct a detailed review of compensation and benefits as a component of negotiating the applicable collective bargaining agreements. That process necessarily involves looking at comparable communities and evaluating their pay and compensation ranges. For non-bargaining unit employees, that process has not been conducted in the same rigorous fashion. Adjustments to compensation in the paying plan occur through the annual budget process and anecdotally at the time of creating new positions, but the city has not conducted a detailed compensation study in over a decade. The city's adjustments to benefits occur through revision to Chapter 3, which has happened in a piecemeal fashion over an extended period of time. Accordingly, those changes do not always represent a cohesive system of employee benefits. Over time, the lack of formal review of compensation and benefit policies for non-collective bargaining unit employees has led to some outcomes that are not beneficial for the city and some outcomes which deviate from best management practices and industry standards for local governments. Non-bargaining unit employees represent over 27% of the city's workforce and a substantial component of the city's investment in personnel. The city currently employs 40 full-time and 27 part-time employees who are within this classification. Over the past 14 years, the compounded annual compensation increases for collective bargaining unit employees has exceeded the compensation increases for non-bargaining unit employees by 35.37%. In other words, for every dollar in additional compensation that the non-bargaining unit employees have been provided, bargaining unit employees have been provided with a $1.35 raise. So that's the 35% differential. As the non-bargaining unit employees are often management and supervisory employees, this inequitable distribution of compensation has reduced the compensation differential between employees and management staff and caused a compression problem. There are tangible examples in the city where employees being supervised are actually earning compensation in excess of their supervisors, or in some cases, even their department heads. Some years ago, the city implemented a program of allowing employees to accrue comp time in recognition of extra hours worked. However, as that program was implemented, the effects were not always carefully considered, and the program has generated costs that perhaps were not fully anticipated at the time of creation. Over time, the city has attempted to revise small portions of this program, but the changes have not been effective in meaningfully changing the nature or cost of the comp time system. Comp time, along with some of the city's other benefit programs for non-bargaining unit employees, are tools which no longer represent the industry best management practices and needs to change. Among the primary goals that the pay and compensation study aims to serve are the following. Number one, allow the city to attract, retain, promote, and reward top talent. Number two, address compression between supervisors and direct reports. Number three, implement a 40-hour work week. Number four, provide for an orderly phase-out of comp time. Number five, properly describe, categorize, and compensate employees by position. And number six, restructure city departments to encourage efficiency. Adoption and implementation of these goals would allow the city to manage the pay and compensation of non-bargaining unit employees in a fair and competitive approach. At this point, I want to turn the presentation over to Greg Kuhn from Sikich to discuss the structure of the study as well as key recommendations. Dr. Kuhn.
Thank you, City Manager Gora and Mayor Ray, council members, council, department heads, and visitors this evening. I wanted to take a few minutes. My presentation will be longer than 5 minutes, so I'll warn you in advance. But we wanted to take the opportunity to provide, both for the council and staff and others that have not been part of the study or different parts of the study along, how the actual analysis unfolded, the steps that we took. And I also wanted to reacquaint the council and others with the team that helped me do the analysis. These kind of undertakings are never something that one does themselves. So by way of introduction, I wanted just to familiarize everyone again with the firm. Sikich is a longtime accounting firm based here in Illinois that was founded in 1928. Today our service line is well beyond the days of green sheets and green shades. We have 5 offices in Illinois. We have other offices around the country, including now Milwaukee, Indianapolis, and St. Louis. But Sikich has had a long-standing commitment to government practice, both in the accounting and auditing world, and as well in the public management and HR lines. As far as myself, I am a product of the school down the street. I'm proud of that. I've had almost half of my adult life has been being part of NIU or being in and out of DeKalb. I've burned a lot of miles and a lot of gas going back and forth, and I wouldn't trade a minute of any of it. But I'm originally a product straight south of here down Route 23 of Ottawa. But my career, I've been 30 years now in the field, and I can almost divide it into thirds. Almost a third as a practitioner, as either an assistant to the manager or a manager in DuPage County. A third of my time has been my affiliation with NIU, and then another third of my time has been in consulting activities, been primarily focused on management or personnel issues. I'm also joined tonight by Christy Musser of our team. Christy's also a product of NIU, as are many of our team members. Another, Julie Strahl. Julie is not here this evening, but Christy has over 16 years of local government experience on the West Coast primarily before she decided that the Midwest was the best. And Christy spent a good amount of her time in the county environment, but a lot at the general administration and HR levels. Julie Strahl has spent time in local government in Illinois as well. And Craig Anderson, recently retired city manager, village manager, I should say, the Chicago area, also part of our team and has, besides his city management experience, some particular expertise in public works. And lastly, Sarah Corhonen is our data analyst, and we were able to attract Sarah away from DePaul University. So that's our team, and it really does take several hands to make this kind of effort come all the way through, because there are many parts and pieces. I would like to walk everyone through the process we went through to conduct the study. So first, let me focus on, as the city manager pointed out, the overall study is 3 phases. The first phase is the compensation and classification analysis, then to be followed by job description updates, and then a performance management plan. On compensation studies, I like to start out whether I'm addressing staff members or elected officials or even doing a teaching or training on the topic. To do a compensation analysis, you really need to take the topic and split it into 2 pieces. The analysis requires on data. And for us, a lot of us in modern management, whether you're in the private sector or public sector, data-driven management is certainly something that is not an unfamiliar term. In compensation studies, we bring data together from 2 different pieces of the environment. One is the external world, or the marketplace. And gathering external data is good old-fashioned survey research. And I know some of my former colleagues and still friends of mine are sitting in the audience that could run laps around me about survey research. But survey research has its strengths and its weaknesses, but in many ways it is the only way to get information from others, is to ask them. So that's the external market. I'm going to talk more about that in a minute. The other piece of information that's required to do this kind of analysis is internal analysis. And that's to look at the particular organization, to look at the positions that comprise the organization, the environment, and the goals and the practices of the organization. So it's the integration of those 2 pieces that then allow us to complete our analysis and then bring forward recommendations for the city to consider. Overall approach, and I am going to warn everyone in advance too, some of the slides we're using this evening are directly from our report to the mayor and council and to the staff. So when we get later into the presentation, there are some actual screenshots. I know they may, I'm not an ophthalmologist or an optometrist, not intended to be an eye test, but we wanted to try to convey in summary form as much information as we could. So this particular slide, though, I wanted to walk everyone generally through the steps that are taken to take this external and internal data views. First thing we do is in any project, we conduct planning and collect background information and familiarize ourselves with the organization and with the issues that are facing it today, and we also gather some historical data. The next step, going to the external world, is if you're going to survey the marketplace, you have to decide, well, what marketplace am I going to survey? And the first exercise that we undertook was to develop a list of empirically developed comparable communities. And we use a weighted measure exercise to do that, which I'll explain briefly in a moment. So once we identify the marketplace where we'll be getting the data, and the goal there is to try to find organizations, local government, particularly municipalities, that look most like DeKalb, but there are no one-for-one likes out there. Next thing is, once we've defined who we are going to survey, the next is to execute the survey itself. We'll talk about that a little bit further. Once the survey data is in, as any good researcher knows, you have to clean the data, sort it, and then we run it through our analyses, and our analyses primarily in this realm are focused on trying to determine how DeKalb compares to the market using percentile measures. And I'll have a few words about percentile in a little while as well. That's the external side of things. On the internal side, on top of the background information, et cetera, that we collect, the internal analysis involves us distributing an instrument that's called the Job Analysis Questionnaire. That's provided to employees that were part of the study. I like to call it a paper interview. It's a multi-page questionnaire. We ask employees to provide information to us about their positions, everything from what are the general goals and the duties of your position, what kind of requirements in education and training, and including their work environment, et cetera. That instrument is used not only for this part of this study, but also as a very strong tool to help update job descriptions. Once we complete the questionnaire process, questionnaires are returned, we note them, and then our staff goes out and we interview representatives of every position that has been part of the study. So if there's a position where there's only one incumbent, that person would be interviewed, but in classifications where there are multiple people, we will select some representatives of that particular position. The next part of the internal world is we take a look at the city's current practices and policies. We'll be talking about that more later. And then in the end, as I've already described, we bring these two worlds together, and then we provide our results and our recommendations to the organization. So first, if I might, let's talk about external data. And to borrow a phrase that I already mentioned a couple of minutes ago, this is a data-driven identification of comparables, or what we like to call empirical modeling. And this is to help define who are we going to survey to collect the data from. Empirical modeling is something that I will try to paraphrase some of what I have on the slide here. The goal of this approach, and it's a tool, in fact, there are some of my colleagues, I didn't expect to be here this evening, but we've actually explored this subject together about identifying comparables. There is the, what I call, normal perceptions or impressions of what other communities might look like this, or what I would call more informal or guesswork kind of approaches. This process actually asks the researcher to go out and collect data on a variety of communities, put them into a weighted model, and then come up with a scoring process that then the communities that look most like the target community, in this case DeKalb, kind of rise to the top. The data that we use, and we did initially use a set of decision rules, for example, populations within 50% of DeKalb was a general rule. Another rule we used was geographic limitations, and then the last rule was municipal fire service. We felt this was something important. Everyone on my team has local government experience, with the exception of Sarah, and being a full-service community in many ways is different than being a community that does not provide full fire EMS services. So the results of that exercise did identify the comparable communities we used for a survey. And another point I'll make here, in paraphrasing and generalizing, we need a good-sized sample when you go out and collect data. One thing about survey research is that you may not get complete responses from everyone that you're asking for information from. So we like to see a sample size of at least 10 communities, up to 15 on occasion if you can get more. But every time you add communities to the analysis as well, you're also confronted with other survey research complications. Will they respond? How long do you wait? Those kind of things. So the communities that were identified through the modeling to be comparables to DeKalb, and there were some also an inclusion of another local government, full-service local government in the area, Carpentersville, Hanover Park, Romeoville, Crystal Lake, Streamwood, Wheaton, Rolling Meadows, Batavia, Elk Grove Village, Belvedere, Hoffman Estates, Sycamore, St. Charles, and then lastly, DeKalb County was part of our survey as well. And if you look at the scoring results that are on this particular slide or in the report, you'll see that the scoring with Carpentersville having 90 points in our model being the closest in comparability to DeKalb, all the way down to St. Charles and Sycamore down at 60 points. So that's the group that we surveyed. In terms of conducting the survey, we go through a process of working with staff. We develop many job descriptions for the positions we're going to survey. We use a technique called benchmarking. Again, because of the logistics and the realities of doing survey research, you cannot, for example, say an organization had 70 positions that they had an interest in. If you sent a survey out to 14 or 13 communities and said, please provide us data for 70 positions, you wouldn't get too many coming back. So we use a technique, and across the profession, it's widely recognized using benchmarking. So we benchmarked several positions to include in the survey. And in order to ask respondents to get as close of a match as we reasonably could, we provide a mini job description. Even though local government is an industry, and particularly municipal government is an industry where a lot of things are similar, there are also things that there are variations. And even in the police realm, the use of ranks over the years has changed. There were, traditionally, you'd have patrol, sergeant, perhaps lieutenant, and a deputy chief and a chief. The ranks of their corporals are being used in some communities. Commander is being used in communities, but commander doesn't mean the same thing in others. So I use that just as an example. We provide a mini job description on top of the title. The data comes in. We scrub it, as we call it. We look for outliers. We do a follow-up. We ask communities if we have questions about a position that may look like it's not a match because of a salary item or something else. We do follow-up to try to get as close of a match as possible. But I want to emphasize one more time that it is survey research. Okay, so what were the results of the market survey that we conducted? We did do market research on both full-time and part-time positions. They were done in two different time periods. But I want to give you some general findings of the analysis. First, a comment I could make just overall is the city of DeKalb's salaries, and we do this at the salary range level too, if I might make that point as well. We find a relatively organic distribution across the marketplace. And I have an illustration here on the next slide that I think will help bring that a little more clarity. But the city, as the city manager pointed out, it's been 12 to 13 years since the last study was conducted. The city has salary ranges that fall all across all the percentiles that are out in the marketplace. Now, we were aiming and working toward a target of around the 50th to 60th percentile. And at that level, there were 6 positions within the city's current salary ranges that fell within the 50th or 60th percentile at the minimum rate. And there were 11 positions that fell within the 50th or 60th percentile at the maximum rate. And this would be out of about 34 positions that we surveyed. We did find a handful of positions within the city's salary range and the salary program today that are at the 90th percentile and above. And that's a position that we typically would call a market leader. And then there are a variety of positions that we found that were also at the 20th percentile or below. And a note that we did make, there was a notable number of those positions that were at the 20th percentile or below that did include your part-time positions. So there's some further recommendations on that as we go along. The slide that's here, this is the illustration that kind of brings those numbers to life. If you look at the chart that's up here, it goes from the 90th percentile at the top down to the 19th percentile or below, or the bottom is the bottom row. The light green shading in the middle, those are the 50th to 60th percentiles. So you can get a visual representation of how the city's current pay ranges for the benchmarks that we surveyed fall within the marketplace. And some of the numbers I just highlighted a minute ago are illustrated on this chart here. To give another view and another piece of analysis other than this percentile break, and if I might, I probably should resist doing this, but I think I'll try to make it as brief as I can. I think in most of our daily lives and conversations, we hear the term percentile used frequently and often, and if anyone's had a child in school, at the high school age or college age or does any standardized testing, percentiles are used frequently. And in fact, I think most of us, we would say, well, the 50th percentile would mean the average, almost. The 50th percentile and the mean are not the same. The mean would be the average. A percentile is a ranking within a specific set of numbers. That's what it is. So if in a particular case we surveyed and we collected data for the position of HR director or something like an inspector of some kind, if we get 12 responses to that data, the 50th percentile is going to be identified by those 12 responses. But as noted in our report, despite our best efforts and staff's efforts, there are some positions where we got very little data back. And in those cases, the 50th percentile is only going to be the result of whatever you have in that set of numbers. It may be only 6. So. The next illustration we have here is a different way to look at the market data in summary form. This chart that's up on the slide at the moment, you see some positions that are highlighted in yellow. I'll answer that question first because you might be curious. Positions that are highlighted in yellow are the ones that move, and all of them do move to the left or move closer to the middle of this analytical breakdown at the 60th percentile. So what they would do is they would be moving farther away from the 60th percentile or some measure compared to that. Those are the positions highlighted in yellow. I think what's most important on this particular exhibit is that we take all the pay data and we categorize it into 3 different views, and we're trying to look at who's at the market and who's above the market within some relative reasonableness, and where people that are positions that might be significantly above the market. So those are the 3 categories. But we do apply them to either side of the middle point. So on our analysis, we consider that if a position is within 2.9% of the percentile that we're measuring it against, that's at market. If the position is 3 to 10.9%, we say that's either above or below market. And if it's greater, if it's at 11% or greater on either end, we say that that would be significantly above or below market. This particular slide is the 50th percentile, and if you might look, you can see the number of positions that are to the left, and those would indicate positions that are below the 50th percentile at 11% or greater. Okay. One last comment I'd like to make on the pay data in general. There are a couple of other items that we collected data on that we wanted to pass along as findings of note. One was on the base work week, or the number of hours of work for most of these positions we surveyed. From the 13 responding communities, almost all, we noted a couple of exceptions, and that's it, a couple use a 40-hour work week as their basis. And for those of you, you may know this math in your head, particularly all of us have been doing our taxes the last few weeks. 2,080 hours is a 40-hour work week, 52 weeks a year. There were a couple of communities, as we noted, that do use a 37.5-hour work week. And again, that was something that I know some of your staff can comment on as well. That was a practice that became a fashion in the 70s and 80s for a while. It has kind of faded away in most instances, and our research supported that. The other item we collected information on was the use of compensatory time. And what we tried to define in our surveys, we asked people to comment and provide us information on what we called structured compensatory time. And that would be time that people would track or keep some kind of a log of, or would have some way of gaining some remuneration for the use of comp time. And again, very much like the 40-hour work week, our research indicated that of all the communities we surveyed, there were only 2 communities that had any kind of a formalized or structured comp time program in place. Lastly, in terms of salary, this is still on the external side of things. We did collect information on benefit that are provided. Again, this is summary information that we asked for. This is not analysis of particular communities' health plan, what their deductible might be or their prescription drug coverage or anything like that. What we're generally looking at is what proportion or what percentage is a community or an organization putting toward an employee premium, what those premiums are, do they have dental coverage, and then we also ask a variety of questions on leave, which would include vacation leave, personal leave, funeral leave, holidays, etc. In general, DeKalb was very comparable to the communities that we surveyed and we compared you to. There's always variations in health plans, and health plans these days are a constant moving target, I think, for almost any organization. But the one item that we did note that was different in the benefit area was the use of compensatory time in the fashion that DeKalb uses it today. Okay, changing direction a little bit. Now I want to talk about the internal data process. If I could, I'll try to be brief. As I mentioned earlier, looking at the internal organization involves kind of 2 pieces of analysis. One is to look at the current pay plan. And what we do when we look at the current pay plan, we're looking at internal relationships. We're looking for compression issues. We also looked at special concerns that were raised in our conversations, in our background meetings. We also take a look at the titles that are used, and we also take a look at organizational structures. And again, taking advantage of the experience of the team that we have, we've had the opportunity to see municipal organizations kind of put together in many ways. So there's not one answer, but we do look for general patterns and industry practices and so forth. On the other side, on the internal analysis, I mentioned that we distributed job analysis questionnaires, we did reviews, we conducted interviews, and from that we use a job factor analysis tool to do scoring that allows us to provide an objective measure or a structured measurement to what jobs are made up of, and there are some general practice rules here I wanted to point out to everyone when we do conduct job factor analysis. The Department of Labor does look at 3 general categories and subcategories for evaluating the content and the evaluation of work when it comes to pay, and those are the skills required, the effort and responsibility of the position, and working conditions, et cetera. There are those overlying factors as well as sub-factors. Performance and seniority are also things that are recognized. The tool that we use uses those basic categories and divides them into 8 categories or subcategories, includes preparation and training, experience, decision-making, responsibility for policy development, planning, task or assignments or duties, contact with others, do they supervise the work of others, and what are the working conditions and adverse circumstances they might be confronted with. So we've taken now both pieces of this information and brought them together to develop for the city recommended adjustments to the current pay plan. And in order to do that, just to highlight, we compared the city of DeKalb to the market data results. We applied our job content and job factor analysis scoring, and then we did some collaboration with senior staff here to make sure we were interpreting things and understanding particular jobs and nuances here. Then we went about the business of developing a compensation and classification schedule, and we assigned positions to pay grades, and we looked for best fits, again, based on this combination of market data and our internal job factor analysis. So this is where we are getting to the point of what were our the overall recommendations in the plan. The new plan that we are proposing is is what I like to phrase as a quasi-symmetrical system. We looked at pay ranges, and we kept pay ranges to about a 45% spread. That's not too different from the city's current plan. The distance between job classifications or salary ranges ranged anywhere from, hold on, I'm going to check my notes, 3.2% to 12.9%, and that, again, is not too dissimilar from the city's current approach. The other overarching thing I would like to mention to council and to those that are here tonight is that what we did when we built the new classification schedule is we aimed all the salaries at the 50th percentile. That was our target, and that's how we built the structure. Now, to some of our more specific recommendations, if I might. The first is we're recommending that the city transition to and convert to a 40-hour work week or to 2,080 hours per year. And the proposed salary ranges that we have prepared as part of our report do reflect that change. And as the city manager pointed out earlier, I won't make this a long point, but in the analysis that's been done by staff, finance staff, et cetera, over the last 14 years, where adjustments were made to certain groups of employees here in the city of DeKalb, this particular group of employees lagged with adjustments to their salaries by over 35%. And again, a topic that the manager mentioned is this idea of compression, where you have very tight relationships between supervisors and the people they supervise. And this pushing up against each other is a term in the business that we call compression, and it does create problems when it comes to promotions. It becomes an issue when people are willing or interested in looking at moving up to the next level. And then with other factors involved in labor law and overtime and things, you can have employees that are underneath a particular supervisor that can, what we call leapfrog them in terms of compensation because of other factors. The other point we wanted to raise about the 2,080-hour work week approach is that this will provide the city an opportunity to compensate employees to the time they devote to their duties over 37 and a half hours. And there are caps on the city's current compensation time program. And in our interviews with a variety of staff at different levels of the organization that were part of this study, there are employees that have significant difficulty trying to use the compensatory time that they have on the books. And again, they're continuing to accrue it and accumulate it, but there are ceilings and so forth. So, there are instances where there are employees that are working beyond 37 and a half hours. They've accumulated all the comp time that they could, but they're still on the job and doing their services for the community. The other thing we wanted to mention in terms of this change related to comp time, and I think some of this is also presented in the staff's analysis. The compensation time practice that the city has had as part of its personnel plan over the years has actually accumulated a relatively noticeable liability or the dollar value of the comp time owed to employees. And again, these are non-bargaining unit employees, but the value of that, according to our work with staff, is over $440,000 of comp time owed to employees that's now on the books. And by way of example, if you just want to look at the previous year, in 2014, $317,000 of comp time was earned, again with the help of the finance staff. And in 2014, there was about $95,000 of comp time was paid out to eligible employees. I think there'll be more on the compensatory time issue after my remarks. The next item we did want to point out in terms of switching to the 40-hour work week as well was the gained productivity by switching to this work week basis. If you take an employee and you change them from 37 and a half hours to 40 hours a week, you've gained 130 hours of productivity from the same personnel. You haven't had to go out and recruit any additional personnel. You haven't had to incur any additional of those costs. et cetera. And if you multiply that, and we just used a number, a rough estimate of 33 employees that would convert from 37 and a half to 40 hours a week, that's 4,290 hours of additional productivity available to the community and to the organization. Staff, again, has been working with us, and their estimate to expand the work week to 2,080 hours is a little over $150,000. However, there is a gain to switching to this approach. When you switch to 40-hour work week, a lot of the compensatory time, and again, eliminating that program, will be absorbed through normal pay. So if you want to do some general math here, I mentioned a number a couple of minutes ago. The comp time earned in 2014 was $317,000, and I won't read all the pennies and so forth. But if you take the savings by converting to a 40-hour work week, so taking the comp time that would be banked, and rather than that, converting employees to 40 hours per week, the net estimated savings per year going to the revised system would be about $167,000 a year. So lastly, thank you for your patience all. I know we can only listen for so long, so I appreciate your patience. The last thing we wanted to make comment on that's in the report is recommending the new pay plan. Excuse me. I didn't want to forget the part-time employees. So to the full pay plan, that's Exhibit F in the report, and you can see how the positions are arranged in their classifications or in their salary ranges. You can see the minimums and maximums that are proposed. For the part-time employees and the part-time schedule that we worked on, the target here again was the 50th percentile. As I mentioned earlier, we did find some significant differentials between what the city's current part-time rates are and going forward. And in that regard, we recommended to the city that those positions be moved to an hourly schedule because these jobs tend to be more flexible, they tend to be more adaptable and responsive to current needs, et cetera. Some are fill-in positions, some fill in when the need arises, et cetera. So in this case, Exhibit F2 is our proposed part-time salary schedule, but instead of reporting an annualized salary, you'll see hourly rates for these positions. Next, part of the process, as I mentioned at the early remarks this evening, is that in doing this kind of analysis, we naturally have an opportunity to interact with staff at a very close level. We learn more about their positions, and we get to see the organization both on the position-by-position basis, also on a department or function basis. And along those lines, we have developed a series of recommendations to the city to consider in changes and updates to titles, and also reclassifications. And reclassifications are those instances where position duties have changed or grown over time, or they have been modified in some other way. So in those cases, we're recommending that employees and their particular pay range would be adjusted from perhaps where they were previously. And position titles that we're recommending are things that we find to be, obviously, the city can make modifications to our recommendations, but that are more in line with industry practices or titles that are most commonly used. In some cases, just to clarify what the duties and responsibilities of staff members are. Okay, lastly, and this is your countdown to the staff. You're finally going to get your turn. Implementation considerations. There are some things that we just wanted to highlight in terms of implementation considerations. Some were already mentioned by the city manager, so I will not go through these in complete detail. One is that we're recommending, and the proposed schedule we have does convert the city's pay plan to 2,080 hours per year. Position ranges would be adjusted to reflect the recommendations of the study. Immediate adjustments would be for full-time employees whose pay falls below the new recommended minimum. Okay, so immediate adjustments for people whose salary would be below the new recommended minimum. In instances where the new salary range is above the current pay rates for part-time positions, we are recommending that the city consider a phased approach or an amortization schedule for these positions, and that staff can do this on a case-by-case or a situational basis. And lastly, in instances where the current position maximum rates are above the proposed pay salary, the common practice would be to hold that existing rate in place until the market and the position become closer in alignment. So with that, I do thank you for your time and your patience for listening to me, and I will turn it over to the city manager.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kuhn. A couple other quick comments regarding the cost implications before I turn the presentation over to Attorney Frieders. As far as implementing Sickage's recommendation with the pay and comp study, sufficient funds have been budgeted in the current fiscal year 15. The cost to implement the study that would impact the fiscal year budget in relation to the pay and comp study is $43,317.53. That includes conversion to a 40-hour work week, addressing promotions and compression, bringing full-time employees to the minimum immediately, and a 3-year phase-in on bringing the part-time employees to the minimum. Dr. Kuhn had outlined the annual costs, so for full transparency, the annual costs are also detailed in the memo. Converting to a merit-based compensation versus continuing on the current automatic step-based program is more cost-effective on an annual basis. With the conservative assumptions outlined regarding the working patterns of exempt and non-exempt employees, the initial expenditures are offset by savings and increased productivity. And when you factor in what Dr. Kuhn and Sickage looked at was a 40-hour work week, we also took it to the next step in the analysis of looking at assuming the best way to put it is a 40-hour work week is a minimum for non-exempt employees, is a maximum for non-exempt employees. For exempt employees, it's a minimum. So when you look at really the increased productivity on the exempt side, we also wanted to take it to that next level to look at what it would look like assuming 42 and a half hours. So if that is the case, as the information presented in the memo, there would be a net savings and increased productivity to the city in the amount of $344,453.38. In summary, this program appropriately compensates employees, would reward performance, and would cost the city less than the current program. And now at this point, I'd like to turn the presentation over to City Attorney Dean Frieders to highlight the necessary revisions to Chapter 3 of the Municipal Code.
Thank you. The city has a somewhat unusual practice of documenting pay and compensation for a limited group of city employees within a codified section of City Code, Chapter 3. That section also covers requirements that are applicable to some employees who are outside of that group, some bargaining unit employees. And separately, the city maintains collective bargaining agreements and other city policies that address compensation and benefits issues. That makes implementation of changes in the city's compensation and benefits program a little bit challenging. Now, prospectively, the approach that's recommended, and that will come back to the City Council, will be consideration of adoption of a personnel manual for all city employees that would cover the city's personnel policies citywide. Compensation and benefits prospectively would be handled by, for bargaining unit employees by their respective collective bargaining agreement. For non-bargaining unit employees, such as the ones that are being discussed this evening, it would be covered by a benefits handbook. That's more of a standard approach, both in business and in government. It also allows for greater clarity and transparency for the council, employees, and the public in terms of what the actual benefits and the cost of those benefits would be. At the time that those documents are adopted by council, which again we're anticipating returning in the next several months, what we contemplate is that Chapter 3 would be completely rewritten, and the compensation and benefits provisions in it as it exists today would be taken out of it. They'd be replaced by those other policies, which would still be subject to the approval and review of the council. Compensation and benefits would remain the province of the council to approve, but it simply wouldn't be codified in the city code. There's not a benefit to the practice of having it in the city code, and as you're seeing this evening, it somewhat complicates the process of managing your benefits and compensation for different groups of employees. So what we've brought before you this evening then is an ordinance that's intended to provide a stopgap measure, a bridge between now and when the council may ultimately implement your final personnel manual and benefits handbook that gives you the means to implement the pay and compensation study now, if that's what the council's desire, and to temporarily supersede the conflicting provisions of Chapter 3, pending the adoption of your ultimate action several months from now with a full personnel manual and benefits handbook and a complete revision of Chapter 3. So again, the complete revision of Chapter 3 would come back at a later date. The ordinance that's before you this evening implements the pay and compensation study, the changes recommended therein, and allows the council to do that currently within the current budget year to start taking advantage of the savings that are contemplated.
So one last thing before turning it over to the mayor and council with questions. I wanted to just address a few questions that I've heard that have been raised in relation to the pay and comp study. First question, is there some personnel receiving disproportionate adjustments in compensation? The city has carefully evaluated the compensation on a per-position basis based upon market data from the city's comparable communities. Sikich has proposed a plan that brings positions to market competitive rates, which does require some adjustments for positions that are significantly below market rate, and thereafter making adjustments in compensation on a pay-for-performance-based system. The adjustments to positions also ensure that each position has responsibilities and a job description that is commensurate with the position and compensation afforded. The second question is, the city cannot afford this compensation and does not reflect local conditions. The program that is proposed by Sikich will actually save the city money over time and will increase employee performance and productive time. It will also ensure more transparency in employee compensation. Right now, the compensatory time in general is not very transparent. This change in process will make it much more transparent. The compensation and benefits are consistent with market conditions in comparable markets and consistent with employee compensation in similar positions in local markets. If the city wishes to attract and retain professional staff that will perform at the level of expectations that the council has, the city cannot afford to not implement the program. Third, instead of designing a compensation system around industry standard of having a prescribed wage differential between supervisors and employees, the city should lessen the differential and use a flat dollar amount of separation. The difference in compensation between management employees and those being supervised accounts for a significant number of factors, including the differences in FLSA status for overtime accrual, the difference in responsibility and obligation, and the impact upon the community. The city has experienced tangible incidents where employees have had to accept effective reductions in pay in order to consider a promotional opportunity. The current system effectively punishes those who succeed and look for greater challenges. Fourth, and finally, employees are being paid for 40 hours per week now. For current employees who were hired before my term as city manager, employees who are working 37.5 hours per week are being paid in comp time, which is a deferred liability for the city. The market rates described in the study are based upon a review of comparable working conditions, including hours of service. The 40-hour work week is the predominant standard. Additionally, as the city transitions from comp time to a true management environment, the expectations of our staff, from my perspective as a manager, is that 40 hours, as I stated earlier, is a maximum for those employees who are not exempt from overtime, but 40 hours is effectively a minimum expectation for overtime exempt management staff. Compensation should accurately reflect that. In closing, this pay and compensation program recommended by Sikich enhances customer service and allows the city to attract, retain, promote, and reward top talent. It also results in a direct savings to the city, both short-term and long-term. Staff recommends adoption of the pay and comp study along with the necessary Chapter 3 revisions. And with that, Greg Kuhn from Sikich, City Attorney Dean Frieders, and I would all be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay. Thank you, City Manager Gora. I would just like to begin the questions asking recent hires, Anne Marie, under your serving as city manager, do I understand correctly, are under the revised terms that are being considered tonight for Chapter 3?
No, I'm glad you brought that up. There's a clear differentiation that anybody that was hired, myself included, and after me, so I'll specifically list the positions, and if I leave one out, I'll look towards the attorney on my right and the assistant city manager on my left. So it would be the city manager, the assistant city manager, the finance director, the community development director, the management analysts, and the assistant finance director are all carved out of this as far as even though we're currently being paid at a 37.5-hour work week, our pay would not change when it would be increased to a 40-hour work week, based on the assumption, and I've shared this story with many, when I was first offered the position and the city said, oh, and you know, you're not going to get comp time. I said, of course I'm not going to get comp time. Exempt employees don't get comp time. And that was the same reaction that when happened when the positions were offered for the following people that I mentioned. So I want to be very clear that there is no direct benefit to those employees as far as the implementation of this pay and compensation study. What it does is it recognizes the employees who have been here for years, who have come to rely on comp time as the differential in pay for the hours that they work in excess right now of 37 and a half hours. And basically what the city has done through the years, it's just been the practice, is that by working the comp time, that has helped raise up, in a sense, the base pay that employees are receiving for base compensation.
Okay. And if I understand the backup material correctly, and you stated earlier, Emery, the net savings of the changes in this pay and compensation plan before us this evening, net the taxpayers of DeKalb $344,453 savings.
That is correct, and that is assuming that you take not only what Sickage did with us taking everyone to a 40-hour work week, but assuming that we're going to, that the exempt employees are averaging or will average 42 and a half hours per week. So
Okay.
that would be a net savings to the city.
Thank you. Other questions from council? Are you, Alderman Naylor?
Don't necessarily have a question, I just have a general comment regarding the total package. This is a study that we had requested probably, 3 years or so ago, and due to various factors, it has not been accomplished until now. And it's, I think, a long-awaited, very useful, very helpful, very pointed study that it does point out some of the significant differences as to how the city of DeKalb goes about compensating their different groups of employees. Having been on both sides of the dais here, I have some experience in this area over many years. And it has always been pointed out, some of these differences, but with probably little attention, whereas now it is very clear some of these differences. The 40-hour week, the different categories, classifications, restructuring, et cetera, and particularly in addressing that compression issue. That's been around for a long, long time, and we definitely need to do something about that. The management employees should be treated, in my opinion, no differently than all the rest of the employees, yet they have been for a good number of years. And I think the data points that out, and we also see that in the 50 percentile comparison now of our minimums and maximum pay ranges out there. I think it's a program that definitely should be advantageous if it's processed correctly, and if the guidelines that are pointed out by the staff and by Sickage here as to how to go forth on this and to manage it are adhered to. I do believe that the program definitely should be beneficial or will be beneficial to the management employees. Yes, there might be some hiccups in it. Yes, there might be some folks that might not be feeling that they're treated comparably, but over time, I'm certain that will occur and should occur. Some of the things, yes, there are maybe in there that I would take difference with, but I think for the good of the whole and the whole body and the management employees, that this is very eye-opening and very welcome. And I think it's a good program, a great start, and hopefully that it'll be adhered to as we go forth, and particularly reviewed on an annual basis, so as these wages are kept in line with what the market is out there, and to continue to address this compression problem that we have out there between basically the bargaining groups and the management employees, or the non-bargaining groups out there. So I support it, and I would ask my colleagues likewise to support it, so we can move forth and really do a great job in treating all of our employees equally.
Thank you. Alderman Snow?
I agree with Alderman Naylor. I think some of these changes have been long overdue. Past practices have harmed the city and have cost the city more than what was budgeted. I think it's right to roll out this, what we want to do all at one time here. It's been suggested, well, we could roll this out piecemeal. I think that would be less transparent. I think you want to see the whole plan. I think you don't want to see just one part this week and a different part next week and a different part the following week. I think to be transparent, you have to show the whole plan, and that's what we're doing here. Will there be changes down the road? You know, I think we might need to improve it as we go along, create the employee handbook. We'll tweak it a little bit, but I think it's important to show the employees everything that we're contemplating doing. And I think in the long run, this plan will actually save the city money.
Alderman O'Leary.
Okay, my concern is about the comp time. I feel that all earned comp time needs to be paid out, and then we move forward with the plan. Thank you.
If it's the desire of the council, staff could return at either the next meeting or in the very near future with proposals for how the city could do that, either within this or over the next several budget years.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. Alderman Jacobson.
I reviewed this plan over. We've had a lot of discussion, obviously, behind the scenes on it. I've heard a lot of the things being said. I've seen the numbers, and we've run the numbers. The reality is it's not a cost savings to our residents. The reality is most of these employees are already full-time employees. So the added 2.5 hours of supposed additional time served is not real. They're already working those hours. They're being overcompensated for them now, so there's some savings in reducing that overcompensation in terms of the comp time that's being awarded to otherwise exempt employees that should be working a minimum of 40 and generally expected to work more. When you look at the overall rollout over time, over the next 2.5 years, what the numbers actually show is that it's a nearly 17.5% raise over those 2.5 years for employees that are averaging over $100,000 a year salary, nearly 2 to 3 times the average resident household in DeKalb. That's alarming. I realize there's some compression issues. I realize a lot of those issues are caused by overtime in the bargaining units. And rather than tackle the issue and the illness, we're tackling one of the symptoms by just increasing the top end pay more at an already top-heavy organization. Again, in looking at the numbers, if there was a savings year over year, you should expect to see those savings cost out. When looking at the 2.5-year projections, it actually will cost us $1 million more for those 42 employees to operate the city in 2.5 years. Numbers don't lie. Those savings aren't real. The reality is this will cost the taxpayer a significant amount of money. Many of our part-time employees will be getting 100 to 200% raises over the next 3-year phase-in. Programs that we've talked about up here that we had issues with their implementation because of cost, that we were assured would be staffed by $12 to $15 an hour part-timers, will now be making $25 to $36 an hour, nearly tripling the cost of some of those programs. This has not been vetted by the Finance Advisory Committee, which is their role to do this. This is something very wholesale and very strategic that will affect the city, not just in this budget year, not just in the near term, but for decades to come. Unfortunately, I think it's been rushed through. I think that The effort was made to get it to this council while they're still sitting on this dais. While I don't blame the staff necessarily for doing their job, again, the direction was to go forward with it. It's unfortunate that I think some of the facts don't seem to jibe with what I'm hearing, both in the backup and what I'm hearing from staff today. The cost savings are really not real. We haven't seen what it'll do to the budget because we haven't seen the draft budget yet for next year. We don't know what our growth looks like for next year. We don't even know if we can afford this. The reality is what we're doing is we're robbing an account that we've set aside as a council for years to cover the banked comp time and using that money to pay for these raises so a budget amendment doesn't have to be come in front of us. The reality is a supermajority probably wouldn't pass this as a budget amendment. So in using that line item tactic and keeping it in there, we are eradicating the savings that we've put away to deal with this comp time issue and pay it out and be done with it over time and using it for our short-term gain rather than the long-term of getting rid of the comp time that we need to do. The reality is that this comp time, in terms of how it's worked out for the city and the taxpayer, has not been great. Employees are being compensated for at least 2.5 hours of time and additional overtime over that 40-hour time when really they shouldn't be as full-time employees. The rest of the world, the rest of municipalities, the rest of our citizens in DeKalb are working 40 hours a week to make their full-time pay. Unfortunately, as far as I'm concerned, it's a definition change. If you came on to work here full-time, you should be working 40 hours. You probably will need to work more than 40 hours, as many employees do in exempt position. To pay them more in 6 and 7% immediate increases for those people to do the bare minimum of their expectations and jobs seems surprising to me and seems unnecessary. Again, when you're looking at the cost out, it's a 17 ballpark % raise for employees that are making 2 and 3 times more than our families here. That doesn't seem fair to me. That doesn't seem, especially in terms of the fact that we haven't even costed this out yet. We haven't seen what these impacts are gonna look like in our budget. We haven't seen what the growth rate's gonna be. We know what CPI is at 1.4%. This is 10 times that amount. For employees that, again, have been receiving a benefit that probably wasn't even a fair benefit to begin with. And that wasn't our fault, that's not staff's fault. That's something that's been carried for years that needs to be corrected. Do we need a 40-hour work week? Yes. Should we eliminate comp time? Yes. There is a much easier and much more affordable way to do so as far as I'm concerned. And to rush this through, again, as we see our business community declining, we see businesses closing up, major tax-generating businesses closing up every day. We see our families getting poorer in DeKalb each year. We see people running from DeKalb because they don't want to pay the taxes and fees. Again, I can't imagine that the people we serve up here feel bad for employees that are making 6 figures plus, that they should be compensated $15,000 or $20,000 more a year. I don't believe that. I don't believe from the residents I talk to that are trying to make the decision of whether or not to feed their families or pay their rent, that are trying to make the decision to buy the medicine they need and to put gas in their car to get to work and to keep the lights on, feel bad for the employees that are making $100,000, $120,000, $150,000 a year with pensions and benefits and health care and all those things. That's who I represent. That's who I'm up here, whose interest I protect and I serve. And there's no way I could ever support this plan with that in mind. And I urge the council to think about this, to slow this down, to let this get to the next council who will have to deal with the realities of this program, who will have to deal with the funding constraints and the limited revenue we're going to have. And they should be given the time to get through this budget process and prove that we could even afford this and that we even have the money to even think of doing something like this. Thank you.
Okay. I'd like to address a couple points that Alderman Jacobson raised. One, I do not feel that City of DeKalb is a top-heavy organization. This council has fully vetted those administrative positions that we currently support in our budget. The roles that those individuals are serving have been, in my mind, and it's been fully deliberated with this council, are fully justified. Secondly, I don't feel this study has been rushed. The pay and comp plan recommendations have been rushed. As City Manager Gorey introduced, this concern began discussion with this council back in March of 2014. Sikich has been engaged for how long, Anne Marie?
Since July
July of
2014.
15? Of 14?
2014.
Okay, thank you. So I realize, and Sikich has brought this council along with various parts of the study, and I think it behooves us to look at the study in the comprehensive nature in which it's presented this evening. Other comments before we turn to the public? Alderman Snow.
I would disagree with passing this on to the next council. I think that's shirking our duties and to say, well, it's a problem, but let somebody else deal with the problem. This has been a problem for a long time. You seem to agree that several changes need to be made, but you're unwilling to make them. What we're doing here affects right now, this year. No decision has been made on next year, the following year, or 3 years from now. So to throw out fictitious numbers, I think is disingenuous. And I have looked over these numbers quite extensively, and with an accounting background, I really do believe that this will save money for the city.
Okay. Other comments from council? Seeing none, I'll turn to Ms. Chronopoulos.
The verbiage, as you go through the backup material and as you listen to your very detailed and fine presentation, and I believe you've worked for the city before, if I'm not mistaken, haven't you, Ms. Sikich, over the years? The firm has, correct, yes. It's very impressive, and there's many of you, Ron in particular, who I've worked with over the years, and you do have a handle of both sides of the fence, so to speak. And Alderman O'Leary, you amaze me. Sometimes you speak the least, and yet you seem to nail things right on target. I wish I could learn to be less verbose than I am and more like you are. And this young man here, who I met only a couple of years ago, and we're often on opposite sides of the political fence, you amaze me as how articulate you are able to be about city matters and how understanding you are of the fine details. And I appreciate what you fight for. I sincerely do. And I know that it's not easy to do what you are doing, not by any stretch of the imagination. But one thing that I was struck with as I read the verbiage and listened to your verbiage is the broad ramifications that this idea has. There's no question that there needs to be some polishing, no question that you need to fix the comp, and no question that you need to look at those kinds of things and update and so on and so forth. No question that employees should be compensated, no question. But this has broad ramifications for the budgetary process, broad ramifications. The fact that you're going to go in there and start changing that Chapter 3 and pretty much eliminating it, that has broad ramifications. What is the council going to have as any kind of leverage to watch over the budget? What? They're foregoing all of their strength, power, ability to govern. They're turning it over to staff. I don't think that's a very good thing to do. There's a reason why we have a municipal code, and that's to give the elected officials the ability to do their job. Net savings, I'm not so sure that there is a net savings. This has been so much information to try to absorb that my little brain is going to have to take a little bit more time to do that. But the other question, and Alderman Jacobson brought this up, the Finance Advisory Board. They're there to vet this kind of thing. Has this gone to the advisory board? I bet you not. Why not? Where's this transparency that we heard of time and time again? Why have they not looked at it in detail, which they should, to see what the ramifications are? So you're going to do a little bit of this, and then you're going to come in and codify or decodify or whatever you want to call it? What is this? What's going on here in this city? It's time that the tail stop wagging the dog, and it's time that they are able to do the kind of job that they need to do. The citizens in this community cannot take this anymore. We can't afford this.
I would just like to point out that in addition to revisions to Chapter 3 City Code, there is a personnel manual that City Manager Gora referred to that is in process. There will be a benefits handbook that will be available. All of those items will be under the purview of City Council. So it's not just giving city staff the latitude to run undisclosed council, unadvised by council's policy and procedures.
I'd like to say that even a little more strongly, Mayor. The budget, the personnel manual, the benefits handbook, the collective bargaining agreements, the set of coherent policies that the city would establish for all of its employees, so you have a clear definition of your obligations to all of your employees, would all be subject to review and approval by the city council, not subject to change by staff.
You raise an excellent example, City Attorney. Collective bargaining agreements go through this very similar, have gone through this very similar process, have they not?
They're subject to review and approval by the city council every time they come up for any change, yes.
Thank you. Other discussion? Alderman Jacobs.
What is the current operating budget of Chapter 3 employees now that we have it on paper? Fiscal 2015 that we're in now.
Are you talking the departments that the chapter?
Again, when we costed it out and we looked
Yeah.
at the numbers, what is the total compensation number for Chapter 3 employees?
I'd have to look at Finance Director Haley. I don't have that information in front of me. I know we did that analysis, but I don't have it right here. I don't know if Director Haley does.
I can look and get back to you. I don't have it in front of me either,
Approximately.
so. I
But
wouldn't wanna guess.
that, city manager, that was in the schedules that we've seen.
We've done, I mean, we've looked at the total dollar amount. I
Thank
don't recall off the top
Thank
of my head.
And looking at after this is phased in 2.5 years, is that number higher or lower?
As far as base wages,
As far as compensation, that we've looked at the total comp, current 15 to fiscal 17, when this is all finished rolling
Yeah.
out, what is the difference in those numbers?
base wages will increase. So you will see an increase there, but we're going to decrease the total cost to comp time. And then the other thing that will happen is with this change is it slows down the increase of wages as we've seen in the past. So the trend, instead of going up, is much more subtle. We're going to decrease costs.
Decrease increases.
Decrease increases.
Would be a better
Yeah.
definition.
Yeah.
The reality is that between now and 17, we're looking at adding $1 million to that operating. And there is some slight comp time savings in terms of $200,000 or $300,000. But the reality is the base wages will go up approximately $1 million from our calculations, correct?
I don't know if it's $1 million offhand, but I don't know I have that specific information. I can tell you, I just looked at one of my spreadsheets. I think the total wages that you're looking at for full and part-time employees is in the vicinity of, I believe, $4.4 million.
And what
for
do
the
we expect
non-bargaining.
it to be in 2017 under our cost out?
Let me see if I have that.
Emery, doesn't page 513, page 8 of the cover
Page eight,
memo
Yes.
give us an approximate?
I
Or
think-
Kathy?
Yes, I think if you look at page 8 of the staff
Thank you.
memo, it does do comparison of past practice versus current practice going to a merit pool versus just a straight 2.5% where that savings is.
David, looks to me like that's a $300,000
Again,
change.
and between those differences, the question is between operating now, after changing the base and part-time and all those things, where will the department be that we were costed out on our sheets?
For which fiscal year? I'm sorry, I was talking to the city attorney.
Between current now, before
Yeah.
we implement this,
Mhm.
and in 2.5 or the 3 fiscal years that this is fully implemented, what is the proliferation? What is the growth?
From looking at the analysis that we had done, currently, you would be going from up to $4.7 million with the merit pool, as we're proposing. If we stay with the current system as is, the salary cost would be $5.1 million. And this also includes the differential that you have to keep in mind, that first column on page 8 is dealing with staying with the 37.5-hour work week. The second column with the merit pool is switching to a 40-hour work week. So we reduce the costs, but we are going up. I don't have the figure of fiscal year 15, so a couple $100,000 increase, but it also includes increased productivity by switching employees to 40-hour work week.
Thank you. Other discussion from council? Seeing none, I'll ask for a roll call on the motion.
I have a question.
Yes, Alderman O'Leary.
I mean, after hearing these numbers, I'm like, okay, wait a minute. We're already looking at the possibility of not getting $2 million right now. It's not, so are we working on figuring out a budget that's gonna be already $2 million less? Or, and then considering the different raises that's going on?
I believe, Alderman O'Leary, you're referring to the local government distributive fund from the
Yes.
state.
Yes.
Which could impact us $2
Yeah, I mean,
million.
yeah.
I'd be happy to address that. I can tell you that our plan right now is we will be presenting a balanced budget to the city council. You should have that 1 week from tonight, as a matter of fact. We will also have contingency plans in place if there is a reduction in LGDF. Initially, what Governor Rauner has talked about is a 50% reduction, which is what you're referring to as far as a $2 million increase. Everything that we've heard through the various organizations that the city belongs to is that it is believed that reduction would be less than the 50%. It's going to be a negotiating point between pretty much the General Assembly and the governor. So our plan, and Director Haley checked with a number of other municipalities as far as what was their strategy going into the budget process, knowing many other communities are on a May 1 fiscal year, whereas we're on a July 1 fiscal year. And it seems to be the consensus of the strategy is to come in with a balanced budget, but have a game plan if there is a reduction. Keeping in mind that typically the General Assembly would have to pass the budget by the end of, I believe it's the end of May, before there's a supermajority that's needed. So if they go into extra session, they will need the supermajority in order to pass it. And what that means from a practical standpoint is both parties will have to buy into whatever the resolution is. What we've heard through our various municipal organizations is there's every expectation that this is going to be a very long, drawn-out session, and that probably will go deep into the summer, so probably well into August before a decision is made. So our plan is if there is a reduction of LGDF, then immediately we can either come to the City Council, the Finance Advisory Committee, a joint meeting between the two, however you want to handle it, with the plan as far as where we would reduce if there's anything that's being recommended in the budget as far as potentially, let's say, a purchase, what we would recommend, and you'll see not only when you get the budget, when we start having the budget meetings next month, is we're going to recommend staggering and not either purchasing some of that equipment until after we know what the reduction is, or if there is a reduction. So we're confident, I mean, to come back to the main point, we're confident we're going to present you a balanced budget next week. If not, I mean, the ultimate goal is to have revenues exceed expenditures, but at a minimum, per the ordinance, per the code, it will be balanced.
Before asking for roll call vote, let me clarify. The motion before us is to receive and file ordinance 2015-17. City Attorney, does this require a majority?
To receive and file, yes, simple
Okay.
majority.
So just a simple majority?
Yes.
Thank you. With that, is there further discussion from council? Seeing none, I'll ask for the roll call.
Snow,
Yes.
Naylor,
Yes.
Baker, O'Leary,
No.
Jacobson,
No.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Lash,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes,
5-0.
thank you. The, what is the pleasure of council at this point? Is there a motion to waive the second reading and approve the ordinance this evening?
I'll make a motion to waive second reading and approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to waive second reading and approve the ordinance before us. Discussion? Seeing none, I'll ask for roll call. And this, Dean, is a majority also.
This, under City Code Section 2.04, it's a supermajority, but it's based on the alderman present at the meeting, so it would be 5 of 7.
Thank you. Roll call?
And that was Alderman Snow motioned, and who was that seconded?
Fanouken?
Naylor,
Yes.
Baker, O'Leary,
No.
Jacobson,
No.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Lash,
No.
Snow,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes.
5-0.
No.
No.
Count.
Oh, I'm sorry. It is 4.
So the motion fails, it'll come back to us in 2 weeks?
Yes.
Okay. All right, moving on to Resolution 2015-31, adopting the housing study year 2. I'll turn to City Manager to introduce this topic.
Sure, and I'm going to turn it immediately over to Principal Planner Derek Hyland, who has been the point person in coordinating the study and working with Center for Governmental Studies. And with that, Principal Hyland.
Thank you, Manager Gora. Good evening. Before you tonight is a lengthy backup, but a hopefully short presentation regarding year 2 of the housing study. Tonight, we have Dr. Shannon Soul and Mim Evans from the Center for Governmental Studies, also Diana Robinson, but this has been about a half a year's progress looking at year 2 of the housing study. If you recall, year 1 looked at what is generally what I would qualify as 95% of the city of DeKalb, looking at the housing stock in the city. Year 2 added a couple of elements that I think the center will discuss this evening, of which the inclusion of Northern Illinois University data and District 428 also has provided data that's included for your backup. Without taking their thunder, I will introduce Dr. Soul and Mim Evans.
We'd like to begin by first thanking you and thanking the university for giving us the opportunity to work with you on the updates to the Housing Information Project. We also want to thank the staff for all of their hard work and the data that they assisted with and the meetings attended for the feedback. And the staff that's not here with us, we'd like to recognize them. We have some folks back at the Center for Governmental Studies that really that did a lot of work here. Tom Kazmierczak, Chow Pao Shu, Liang Tang, Ben Shu, Sherry Taylor. Okay. All right. So there were some events over the past few years that kind of led up to this project. We had the housing recession, or the recession overall, and some investors looking at the community to invest in the community. And that surfaced some questions which included, what does our existing housing stock look like? Where might we be experiencing stress? Do we have an over and under supply of certain housing types, especially in the rental? And what should our student housing policies be? So in the spring of 2012, the city and NIU launched a project to develop a comprehensive analytical database and related analytical and reporting tools. And the goals were to develop a complete housing inventory, provide an evidence-based tool for decision-making, assess exterior conditions of residential properties, benchmark current efforts by the city and NIU, and better understand DeKalb's supply of housing. This was certainly a highly collaborative approach. As you can see by all of these circles represent the information provided by different entities. We had the City of DeKalb, Northern Illinois University, the Center for Governmental Studies, DeKalb Township, the Housing Authority, the School District 428. We had the Chief County Assessment Office, and just a whole host of others. If I've missed you, I do apologize. We had many, many data providers, so thank you all. So the key deliverables included the database and the housing report. In the report, we have an executive summary, a housing synopsis, as well as the profiles, one for a study area and 24 individual neighborhood profiles. In year 2, we added some enhancements as well. So with that, there was the neighborhood 24, which is NIU campus. The boundaries were included in the maps, as well as information. Student demographics were added, residence hall information, and on-campus incidents. School District 428 also provided information. They provided student concentrations by grade level, the free and reduced lunch information, and the student movement in and out of the neighborhoods. Also, a third key enhancement for year 2 was the use of the city's rental database for assessing actual rental counts. Benefits of this study include evidence-based decision-making, optimized technology, and increased collaboration. Mim Evans will provide you with much more detail about some of the outcomes and potential for even more benefits in the future. This map here shows you the scope of the housing study. The green shaded area is what we call the study area, although you'll see the entire city boundaries are gray. And so the gray area represents, again, it's city boundary, within the city boundaries, but there was little to no housing there. And then there's a placeholder at the very north end of the city, the peach shaded area. That's a placeholder for a proposed subdivision called Iron Gate. And so what were some of the highlights that were reported? In the report, you'll see there's a housing composition, and the housing composition is going to show the breakout of information such as how much rental did you have and how much owned units were there, dwelling units. And it's a 56% ratio, a 56% rate of rental units, 44% were owned. And what's interesting, which was actually very encouraging, is that the housing database, the rental database that we used from the city, the information was similar to the prior year, so it was determined to be a very reliable source for going forward. You'll also see that there looks like there's a large increase in group quarter capacity. That's the result of adding campus. Those are group quarters in neighborhood 24. And so throughout, we'll go through quickly. These maps are in the report. We'll just highlight what you have access to now. You'll see maps such as group quarters, and through these maps, as we go through, the darker shading usually represents a higher concentration. So I'll just give you an example on this one, and then we'll move forward kind of quickly. In this one, you'll see purple shading represents a higher concentration of group quarter capacity. This one is just showing you the difference between neighborhoods that have higher concentrations of rental units versus owned units. The rental units are shaded green, and the higher concentrations of owned properties, residential properties, are shaded purple. And the darker the shading, so in this case, the darkest purple represents there's 75% or more of the properties are owned units. And this is another map that's included in the report. It shows you concentrations of subsidized housing. Subsidized housing are the place-based subsidies, and then the next map shows the housing choice vouchers, which travel with the tenant, so those are tenant-based. And then the following map is a map you'll see in the report about foreclosures, and here you can see that the highest concentration of foreclosures were south of Route 38. That purple area shows the bulk of, or the majority of the foreclosures. We move into quality of life threats. You'll have this information in the report too. There's 256 quality of life threats per 1,000 residents. And personal safety threats, 47 threats per 1,000 residents. In the report, you also see information about what were the top 3 of each categories for quality of life and personal safety. We also structured some of the information around areas within DeKalb. This is a map that shows neighborhoods that were adjacent to NIU. They are the dark shaded green. And you'll see in this map, you'll have information about areas that are, we call the city center, the dark shaded green as well. And you'll have information about population densities, quality of life threats that are very specific to those areas. I'll give you an example. So in far north, when you look at the report, you'll see information that's specific to the neighborhoods designated as far north, which are, in this case, neighborhoods 5 and 6. These are neighborhoods that have higher home values, higher median household incomes, and sorry, I need to flip through this real quick. Low housing and population densities, quality of life and personal safety threats are low, and again, that's another area that we've designated for the proposed subdivision for Iron Gate. So that's just one way to look at some of these maps that we've structured them based on geography, those 4. NIU campus is neighborhood 24, and there will be very specific information about neighborhood 24, which you can look at either in the form of a map or also the profile that will be within the report. Home sales and listings. This was kind of interesting. If you look at the assessor's file, the assessor's files are lagging, so you'll see that there's a decrease in the assessed values It was 158,000 in 2013 for the average assessed home value, and it's 129,000 in 2014. But if you look at some of the market indicators, the market appears to be improving. You're seeing more homes listed, 91 more homes listed, 200 more homes sold, 7 fewer days on the market on average. Average selling price increased by $7,200, and the vacancy rate declined by approximately 3.5%. So there's some good news there. It's always good to look at what we see in the assessed files, the assessor's files, in conjunction with the market data. This is an example of another map that you'll have in the report of population density. And this year, we have share of NIU students by neighborhood. It's no surprise the purple shaded area stands out. That is campus. Then you'll see the 2 blue neighborhoods above, and then there's one below campus where there's a high concentration of students as well. In year 2, we received information from the school district. They provided information about student counts in aggregate by neighborhood. They broke it out by grades, and they also provided us information with their student transfers in and out of the neighborhoods. So in this case, when you look at transfers of students that go into a neighborhood and out, and you look on both maps, and if you see an area where there's either purple or blue on both maps, then that tells you there's some instability within the neighborhoods. The yellow shaded, so in the case of that very bottom, yellow neighborhood that's kind of dangling to the south, I believe that's 20. That's an example of low mobility in and out of the neighborhood there. The school district also provided information about students on free and reduced price lunches to help us with a proxy for income levels, and so not necessarily income levels, but maybe some issues of income there. But it's certainly a great tool to incorporate this year, along with all of the other student information. And in this case, they also provided information about the district ratio, which was 55% students on free and reduced price lunches. In the study area, it was 57, which is also quite similar to the state, which I think is 52. We have that within the report. This is an example. We don't expect you to be able to read all of the details. It's basically what a profile looks like. You'll see one for the study area. This is one for neighborhood 23. The top right corner, you'll have a map of the neighborhood. You'll have some zoning on some of the maps. And then you have the list of the variables, the indicators, and how they compare also to the study area averages. You'll also have a little narrative at the top to describe that neighborhood. This is an example. This is neighborhood 24, which is campus. It is going to look very similar to the other neighborhoods, but there are some differences. They don't have owned units here, and there are just a few other items that are slightly different, but you can look through that and ask questions. And I'm going to turn it over to Mim now to talk more about the outcomes of this project.
Good evening. One of the objectives of the database was to provide you with a tool that would allow you to look at assets and opportunities and challenges by neighborhood. And one of the outcomes of the database is that you now have such a tool so that you can truly compare one neighborhood to another or one neighborhood against the standard. But as you're going forward and planning for where you want to put your investment in time, money, staff, whatever, you do have this neighborhood analysis available to you. The database can be used in planning for the delivery of services. Public transportation is an example, and we'll go through some of these in more detail in just a minute. The city's crime-free housing unit has been able to use this information in its efforts. last summer's Camp Power, which served a particularly challenged group of youth. The location for that was supported by looking at the database and seeing where the need was greatest. And as the city thinks about a new comprehensive plan, the City of DeKalb actually will have a tool for that planning team to use that is rare for communities to be able to turn over to those planners in terms of the level of data and where all of those different characteristics are actually occurring within the city. So that is something that the city should feel very good about, being able to make available to a comprehensive planning team. So let's talk about some of them in a bit more detail. Some of them are really, I think, very interesting. I think you'll find they are too. First thing I want to talk about is one of the things Shannon mentioned was that some of the data that is available is exterior building conditions and also two kinds of threats to the population, quality of life and public safety, which I'll lump together and call crime. Because you have these two things, something called the broken window theory, which I'll explain in just a minute, is something that you folks could test out here in DeKalb. Broken window theory is a theory that says that minor building maintenance issues, if left unrepaired, lead to a sense of disorder within the community, further deterioration of building and neighborhood conditions, and eventually behavior issues that result in crime. Because you now have those two pieces of information, both where different kinds of crime are occurring and at what rate, and where exterior conditions are not as high as you might like, you can look at whether or not in the city of DeKalb you believe there is a correlation between these two things and what the implications of that would be. And even further, if you were to decide that you wanted to target crime reduction in a particular neighborhood because you found that there was a correlation between crime and building conditions, you might target, all right, let's see if we can improve building conditions in this particular neighborhood, and then be able to go back in and see, did it have the desired effect? Do we now see that there is a reduction in crime in this area because we have improved exterior conditions? This is just an example of the way in which this database allows you to take any of a number of variables and combine them in different ways as you're thinking about how you want to target your improvement programs throughout the city. Not only can you define exactly what it is that you need to tackle very specifically, but you have a method of measuring whether or not you've spent your money in a way that is effective. Have you achieved the results that you desired? Another and quite different example. The blue lines on this map are the Husky bus route. That's where the buses go now. The other lines, and I think it's a little tough for you to see, but there are colored lines in there, and as they get more towards red, there's a greater concentration of NIU students living in that area. So by having that wonderful data that we got from the university that shows us where university students live, where they are concentrated, we're able to look at whether or not the bus routes are going where the students are. This is the kind of, again, combining different variables that can allow you to plan effectively. So going forward, a map like this can be shared with the Husky bus line, also can be shared with Transvac, and they can determine whether or not they're really optimizing where those bus routes are. Other kinds of public services could be addressed in the same way. Land use planning. We've been talking about a new comprehensive plan for a while in DeKalb. As you do move into that effort, there are a couple of ways that this particular database will be of great use. One is matching up facilities with the population that is most likely to use them. Just for example, let's take recreational facilities. Is the land that is being designated as parkland, open space, public space, athletic facilities of various types, well located to serve the people that use those particular kinds of facilities? Conversely, if you would like to attract a certain kind of resident to a particular area, you might be able to look at whether or not that particular area had the the amenities that were likely to make that kind of a residential development a success. So it works both ways. And again, this is the sort of thing that it could apply to all kinds of uses, not just recreational facilities. I'd like to talk about downtown for a minute. Downtown has received a tremendous amount of effort and progress here in DeKalb, and there's a tremendous desire to have a successful, continually growing business community downtown. Well, successful businesses don't operate without customers to support them. This database will allow you to look at whether or not those folks who live within walking distance of downtown are likely to be the same folks who would be customers of the businesses that are operating downtown. Is it a good fit? If it's not, then there's a couple of options. One would be to encourage housing that will bring the kind of customers that can support those businesses. Another would be to encourage the kind of businesses that will be frequented by the people who live nearby, who are the customer base. I'm going to talk about each of these, but a little bit out of order. And I'd like to, now we're looking ahead, is what could we do to further grow this database? And before we get into that, I'd like to say that when you look at the improvements that were made between year 1 and year 2, the addition of the rental database, the addition of the NIU information, and the school district information, these are examples of where collaboration is spreading within the community, and where data that is out there is being put to use. It isn't going out and inventing new data. It's gathering what other folks, other organizations already know, but just bringing it into one system, one structure, so that we all can benefit from it even more. So as we look ahead, there's some of that we can continue to do. And I'd like to start by talking about some of the new data that might be added. We have done nothing yet with looking at commercial and industrial space. Well, you might say this is a housing study, so why would we want to be looking at commercial and industrial space? It's helpful when you're talking about where people live to know where it is they need to go and where the opportunities are for them to find employment. So the relationship between housing and neighborhoods and commercial and industrial space is one that would be valuable for the city to have. We could get further information on transportation systems and utility systems as well. There's additional information on rental housing that we still don't have. The rental database that the city provided this year was wonderful in that it gave us a chance to see whether or not we were getting close on those counts of rental units. But it would be even better if we had rental rate information and vacancy data. We already have these things incorporated into the study, but they are not as accurate as they could be. And if we could get that information on a more accurate level, that would be a wonderful addition to the study. It has been difficult to know exactly how many NIU students live off campus and where they live. This is a problem that the university is well aware of and is working on, and makes a big difference in the provision of services, both by the university and the city, and also, for example, in the city's efforts to recruit new businesses to come to town. It's very difficult to give them an accurate head count, to give them accurate information on income levels or where their customers might be living when we have this unknown of exactly where are all those university students. How many do we have? Where do they live? This is something that would be quite an improvement to the database. Trend analysis. 2 years do not make a trend. We have 2 years right now. As the city goes forward, having true trend analysis can make decision-making much easier for you, no matter what the topic is that you're considering. So that is something that we would encourage as you continue to think about future years. Some examples where trend analysis could be helpful are housing units shifting from owner-occupied to renter-occupied, or perhaps vice versa? And if so, where is this happening? Exterior conditions. Are certain neighborhoods improving as perhaps housing units turn over? Or are there areas of town where housing units are actually in decline? And another example, NIU students, We know where they are now, but are they shifting around? And all of these things are tied together. For example, if a neighborhood is shifting more towards renter occupancy, is that because students are moving into that neighborhood, or is it a different kind of renter who's moving in? So you can see that there's so much interplay between these different variables. And all of these things, if they could be studied over time, would continue to give the city a clearer picture to base your future decisions on. So once again, I'd like to echo Shannon's thank you to those folks on city staff and elsewhere who provided data, and to the council for your support of this project over the past 2 years, and we would be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Questions from council? Alderman Naylor.
Yeah, I just wanted to, a couple of your examples that was on the last screen up there about trend analysis, owner to renter occupancy and vice versa. What are you looking at there, owner to renter? Owner occupied?
Whether or not a particular housing unit is occupied by someone who owns the unit, or whether it's a renter occupied unit owned by somebody else.
And how readily available is such data as that? Is it readily available or not?
Yes. This is an example. I'm going to pull up the map where you have information right now that shows you where you have higher concentrations of own unit versus rented units. And again, that's where we have, oh, I may have just passed it, right there. So this map right here, the green, you see there are higher concentrations of rented units. So we would look over time, do some of the green areas convert to a purple, which means they moved from being mostly rental to now they're mostly owned.
Right.
Yeah.
But that information is currently available in a similar fashion as right there? Is that what you're looking at? You're not looking at to add anything?
You have information for the current year, but you had a change in the source of rental information. So it's hard to look at 2013 to 2014 on the
Sure,
rental
sure.
because of that change in source.
One other question I was going to ask is, how often then would you recommend that this study be updated, or are there just sections of it that would be updated periodically, or the entire study?
This information would be very easy to update on an annual basis, and I would highly recommend you update this type of information annually. Incidents are readily available, easy to update annually. Where you would want to probably make some things maybe 3 to 5 years would be something like the exterior condition assessments. They don't change that much year over year, and it's also, you know, an issue of feasibility. So you probably would want to stagger some of those updates 3 to 5 years.
Okay, thank you. It's very, very interesting.
Alderman Fanuka.
When you were doing the study, was there any neighborhood that particularly surprised you with how the results were different from a preconceived idea that you had? I mean, like, and I'll just pick one out that really surprised me. I'm looking here at neighborhood 15, I think it is, which is the Elwood neighborhood, where more than 75% of the properties in there are rented. And I was surprised at that number, thought much higher of that would have been owner occupied.
I guess because we had looked at this last year, that wasn't as surprising to us. What surprised us was location of the students in the school district, where they were living in conjunction with, let's say, where even the schools were located. So let me flip over to that real quickly. So for the school district, there we go. This is a map that shows you where the high concentration of pre-K through 12 students are located. And if you, in the report, we describe where the students pre-K through 5, they're mostly in neighborhoods 1, 3, 18, and 21. Those students are a little bit further from where the schools are actually located. We actually have a placeholder of where the schools are located with a blue star. I think it's a blue star. So yeah, that was something that was surprising to us.
The school district information in general provided a whole different picture of the community. The movement of students in and out of different neighborhoods was really a surprise, because there was so much of it in some neighborhoods and so little in others, to the point where it certainly is an indicator of stability within that neighborhood, and something to keep an eye on.
Alderperson Rash.
Thank you. I just had a question, and as far as the study as a whole goes, it's a relatively, small pocket, but you may not have the information at hand. I was curious, in looking at the map that had the placeholders for senior housing, and I did not see one for Colonial House, which is in my neighborhood, neighborhood 8. And I was curious as to how that was counted. I was trying to look at the more specific data on page 48 of your report and wasn't quite figuring out how that was accounted for.
I'd have to look at the details. I apologize. I don't have that off the top of my head. I know that with the assisted living and rehabilitative living, we worked with the city to identify where those were located. We also tried to do some verifications on the website. We even called some of them. I think, we learned that they were actually converted to a different type of unit. So we worked with the city, we checked the website, we made phone calls to confirm.
I would
this.
encourage Alderperson Lash, along with other aldermen, to, as we have an opportunity to further digest and study the update of the housing study, to coordinate those through your office, Anne Marie.
Sure, absolutely.
And we can certainly come back to those specific issues. Okay. Other discussion? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the housing study, resolution 2015-31.
So moved.
Second.
Moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, roll call.
Baker, O'Leary,
Yes.
Jacobson. Was it a yes?
Yes.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Lash,
Yes.
Snow,
Yes.
Naylor,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes,
7-0.
thank you. And thank you to the Center for Governmental Studies for the presentation this evening and the effort in the update. I apologize, Bessie. Do you want to comment?
Sure. This is the same study that was done a couple of years ago, correct?
1 year ago.
And where, before your administration, isn't it the initial study that was started quite a while ago?
The second year of that study.
Right, but okay, all right, that's what I, as I recall, and certainly this kind of information is very helpful. There's no question, and it's good to gather, and there's a lot of information to be gathering, and I can see where it needs the updating. But if I'm not mistaken, at its inception, the folks from Dara, the rental community, found several flaws in the original study, and, they brought, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but there were several omissions and things that they thought were not gathered as accurately as they could have been. And I was wondering if the rental community had been connected with and touched base with. Also, it's more or less the vetting process that some of the aldermen even asked about. Was this looked at all by the Plan Commission? Did you get any input from the Plan Commission? Any of the neighborhood groups that already exist in the various wards, connecting with the various aldermen, the realtors? They're an excellent source of information. And the service industries, the various service industries, which would include what Alderman Lash was saying, not only in the housing community service industries, but the people who, the various businesses who service the population. Was any information obtained through them, especially the Plan Commission, too? Did
Okay.
you talk to them at all, or not?
Couple of things, in terms of the sources of information.
Could you maybe go up to the microphone again, please?
All of those sources that you mentioned are excellent and would be very interesting to talk to. Our objective in preparing this particular study was to utilize information that was objective, already collected from a reliable source, and not subjective or impressions on the part of local businesses or neighborhood groups. It was all meant to be hard data. The other kind of data, the softer data, the opinions and feedback and input, can come in different kinds of studies, and I know the city has plans for some of those other kinds of studies where that kind of input will be obtained and can be combined with the information in the housing database to give an even more complete picture of what is going on in the community. So that's why the focus was on these kind of more standardized kinds of data sets to be used. As far as contact with the Plan Commission, we worked with the city, with Derek and the other planners, and Anne Marie, following their lead as to bringing different players into the process, and I'm sure that they could better talk about that particular issue.
The Center for Governmental Studies is currently engaged for the strategic plan. I think we identified there'll be 15 workshops anticipated in that strategic planning process.
At least.
So neighborhoods will be reached out to. I'm sure Diana Robinson has access to this public document. It's available through her Center for Governmental Studies. So thank you. Let's move on, and thank you, folks, for the presentation this evening. Moving to Ordinance 2015-4, amending Chapter 23, Unified Development Ordinance, UDO, Article 5, Zoning District Regulations. I'll entertain a motion. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion. I'll turn to Derek Highland, Principal Planner.
Just some introductory comments on the four ordinances before you this evening, ranging from Article 5, the zoning district regulations, Article 7, which we've talked about a couple of times, most recently at the city council level, supplemental district regulations, Article 13, signs, and then Article 19, non-conforming situations. This has been a laborious process between the Planning and Zoning Commission and the council. I think we've talked about it. I've met with a couple of the aldermen since we last had this discussion here in this room. For your consideration tonight are the proposed changes to each of those articles in red line form, and then the ordinance adopting it in a very clean format. So I guess I'm here to answer any questions that may arise.
Okay. Derek, I'd just like to note that these these amendments to this Unified Development Ordinance have been in 7 months of deliberation.
That's correct.
4 months before the Planning and Zoning Commission. It's been before this council since November 10th of 2014.
That's correct.
Okay. Questions, discussion? Alderman Jacobson?
I just had one question, one change requested. Number 5, let me get you a page number here. I think it's 1018 that I'm looking at. It would be 728 under the ordinance. 1018 in the backup.
Do you want to get to that question when we're on Article 7, or you want to address it? No. I'm open to either
We're dealing
discussion.
with Article 5.
We're Article 5 right now, correct?
Yep. 1018 is Article 7?
Okay, that's fine.
Right?
I apologize.
Okay. be happy to address whatever question you have, however.
I'll wait till 7.
Okay.
Other discussion? Hearing none, I'll turn to Bessie. You wanted to speak?
Just a quick question. This is a boatload of ordinances here. A lot of work going into this. But the question for all, bless you, is the same for each of them. And that is, has this been vetted by the Plan Commission?
Yes, 4 months.
Okay, and they have held public hearings, if I'm not mistaken, over a period of time.
Yes.
Now, this is a more direct question. It is my understanding that there was a request to have a joint meeting between the Plan Commission and the City Council on these items, and that the Plan Commission did not want to. Is there any element of truth to that? And if that is so, that would concern me.
Plan Commission was approached, Bessie. Plan Commission felt that they gave due deliberation to these ordinance revisions, gave their best input to City Council, and chose not to further deliberate on the issues.
The entire commission said that?
It was offered to the chair of the commission.
And the chair of the commission said that there's no need for the council to meet in joint session with the Plan Commission. Is that correct?
That's my understanding.
I see. Thank you.
Thank you, Bessie.
I actually have a question relating to that issue. It was my understanding the direction of the council was to schedule a meeting with them. As the committees serve at the pleasure of the council, if the council requested a meeting, how did they have the right to decline that meeting?
I was told that they were not interested in meeting. I can't answer that specifically.
I don't think it was, I mean, it wasn't a soiree, it wasn't an ice cream social. We said we wanted to have a meeting with them to get their input and to understand these changes from their perspective. I mean, I've never heard of that occurring. I mean, what if another committee refused to meet, or what are our options here?
If the council wants to schedule a meeting with the Plan Commission, you certainly could do that. Again, the response that we had from the Plan Commission was that they felt as though their comments were embodied in the ordinance, that they didn't have anything new to add since they had considered this several months ago, and they didn't see the merit in having a special meeting or a joint meeting. They didn't have any comment to add beyond what the recommendations were in the ordinance.
Okay.
Further discussion? And this motion is to receive and file at first reading, Article 5. I'll ask for a roll call.
O'Leary,
Yes.
Jacobson,
I guess I just declined to comment. Nobody else cares about the rules and what we ask, why do they matter? I declined to vote. Does that work?
Yep. Abstain.
Wonderful.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Lash,
Yes.
Snow,
Yes.
Naylor,
Yes.
Ray.
Yes. Moving to ordinance 2015-5, amending Chapter 23 Unified Development Ordinance, Article 7, supplemental district regulations.
I'd like to make a
We can
motion
waive second
to,
I'm sorry.
I was gonna ask if we could waive second reading.
Oh, I apologize. Do you want to make a motion?
So moved.
second.
It's moved to waive second reading and pass amending Article 5, and seconded by Alderman Fanouken. Discussion? I'll ask for a roll call.
Okay, so we're back to,
We're
or we're back to,
Waiver of second reading.
ordinance 2015-4, waive second reading and pass.
who brought that forth?
Alderperson Lash, seconded by Alderman Fanouken.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Lash,
Yes.
Snow,
No.
Naylor,
Yes.
O'Leary,
Yes.
Ray.
Yes,
6
passed. Motion passed. Thank
Yes.
you. Ordinance 2015-5 then, and we had a
I'd like to
motion.
make a motion that we do 2015, 5, 6, and 7 omnibus all in one motion, please.
Okay, it's been moved to lump ordinance 2015-5, amending Chapter 23 UDO, Article 7, supplemental district regulations. Ordinance 2015-6, amending Chapter 23 Unified Development Ordinance, Article 13, signs, Section 13.03, prohibited signs to clarify inconsistencies with the remainder of the UDO regarding signage, and ordinance 2015-7, amending Chapter 23 Unified Development Ordinance, Article 19, nonconforming situations. And this would be to pass an omnibus vote to receive and file?
All three, yes.
All three.
And for clarification, the motion is to approve all three in omnibus form, correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. And there was a second?
Second.
Okay. Discussion. Alderman Jacobson.
I'll start with 7, because that's the low-hanging fruit. In terms of, did you get to the page number I gave you? It was 1018.
Yep.
That first paragraph up there, the first full paragraph, I know we made some revisions to that, any violation to the state code, et cetera. It reads now, any violation of applicable building codes or fire life safety codes or inspection requirements shall constitute a violation of zoning permission. Upon a finding that an approved special use will or has become unsuitable, I'm sorry, I'm jumping here a little bit, my computer's jumping. The council shall have the authority to revoke the permit after affording the current property owner the right to be heard.
Which section is that?
Right up here, number 5.
He's 7.17.02.
Basically,
Number
upon
5.
a building code violation or life safety violation, that they could lose their special use. Why wouldn't we give them the opportunity to at least correct that issue? I appreciate the fact that they have the right to be heard, but that doesn't really give them any protections. They can sit up there and say, please don't shut me down, and the council can vote to shut them down. I would think we'd at least give the building owners the right to fix those issues, especially, a fire life safety issue could be that an exit sign wasn't working, could be that an extinguisher was a week past due. It could be a relatively minor violation, and they don't even have the ability to fix that violation before the city can come in and shut down their business.
I believe as that section is worded, what it indicates is that a violation of one of the codes that you cited would be also a zoning violation. But in order to have any impact on the zoning use itself, it would require a finding that the approved special use permit will or has become unsuitable or incompatible in its location as a result of the nuisance or activity generated by the use. So the city would have to, as it goes on to say, afford the property owner a right to be heard, and the city would have to conduct a hearing about whether activity generated by the use has caused the property to become unsuitable or incompatible for the special use permit to persist. So if the use becomes incompatible with the district by virtue of the activities on the property, it affords a process after a hearing to revoke a special use permit.
So they'd have to go through it. It's not just,
It's
it
not
can be
just
yanked.
correct. And it's not just that a violation occurs, it's that violations occur that render the property unsuitable or incompatible for continuing use. And again, after a hearing, it's not a summary proceeding.
Can we put that in? Upon a finding at hearing or something, just so, it affords.
After affording the current property owner the right to be heard, and it, upon a finding, after
I'm
affording.
saying, the current list is upon a finding at hearing or through administrative hearing.
And that sentence concludes with, after affording the current property owner the right to be heard. But we can certainly add additional language if that's the council's preference.
I would prefer that, just so it's clear, again, the right to be heard could be standing up in front of council for 2 minutes and saying, please don't shut me down. It doesn't specifically denote that they do have that due process or hearing. It would be my preference that at least we added that in upon the finding at hearing or something along those lines.
Alderman Fanuka.
Dave, are you just suggesting some phrase along affording the owner due process?
Correct.
After the conduct of a hearing, a
Yeah.
due process
Yeah,
hearing?
of an administrative or due process hearing. I would certainly appreciate that.
Is that a motion to amend?
It would be a motion to amend.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Moved and seconded to amend. Do we want to vote on that?
I would
Amendment?
suggest we
Okay.
take amendments as they come.
Roll call?
I just broke up your, your omnibus.
Because this is just an amendment to the omnibus.
Yeah, the omnibus will still be.
We're still good.
So I think he just broke it up.
This is just a motion to amend part of it.
We're
Okay.
just voting on the amendment.
Sweet.
Point of clarification, this is on the amendment.
Correct. To Article 7.
You're in trouble.
I know.
Lash,
Yes.
Snow,
Yes.
Naylor,
Yes.
O'Leary,
Yes.
Jacobson.
Yes.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes.
7-9.
Further discussion? Alderman Jacobson.
Number 6, or 2015-007. This one scares me a little bit. Basically, what we're saying is if a business shuts down and something doesn't come in within 6 months, they lose all of their special uses and grandfathers? Is that the case?
I'm sorry, I didn't follow where you were.
Non-conforming situations.
Page number?
Article 19, or 20, Article 19.
What section of 19, Dave?
Let me get to that page. It's a big one. Bear with me a minute.
1057, 1058.
I have 1055 on mine.
Okay, that's beginning of the ordinance. Where is
Give me one sec.
the section?
1057?
Again, the intent
Section-
of the ordinance,
19.03.03.
Okay, got it.
I'm still not there. It's working its way down. I know, it's working its way
Okay,
down.
so when non-conforming use of a
In
property.
a non-conforming use, if a business that was using a special use or grandfather were to shut down for whatever reason, basically what we're saying through this is after 6 months, they lose all those grandfathers and special uses, correct? Still not there.
That is certainly the interpretation I would agree with. It gets a little more involved than that, but
It would not relate to a special use.
correct.
It would
Not
relate
relate
to a
to-
non-conforming use. So a
Which would
legal,
include what?
a existing use of property that is otherwise not permitted by the zoning district. So a use that hasn't been codified in any fashion, a use that hasn't been approved by a special use permit or a PUD or a rezoning. It's a use that predates the zoning classification that has
Okay.
continued in existence.
And my question was in terms of a fraternity house, if a group were to leave mid-year and 6 months later it still hadn't been filled yet, do they lose that special use for their rooming house license?
Rooming house license would be a separate question. This would not affect a
Would not
special
affect it.
use that was lawfully issued. It would affect a use that, again, was legal non-conforming and wasn't documented in any
Okay.
fashion.
Thank you.
Other discussion? And this is to receive and file adoption
For all three.
Yes.
for all three.
And again, I want to
As
be
amended.
clear on that point. A special use permit is a form of a zoning permission. So a zoning district may say, you can have housing, and may have a special use saying you can have fraternity housing. And if you have a special use permit, it would not be a non-conforming use. So this section would not affect that. A non-conforming use would be, I have used my house as a blacksmith shop forever, and I'm in a residential district. And if I discontinue that use for manufacturing, that after a period of time, that use is no longer permitted as a legal non-conforming use. That use goes away.
Okay, roll call.
Okay, so we're on the omnibus here?
Correct.
Okay.
The 2015-5, 2015-6, 2015-7.
Okay. And it is receive and file?
Correct.
Okay. Fanouken?
Yes.
Flash?
Yes.
Snow?
Yes.
Naylor?
Yes.
O'Leary?
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Ray?
Yes.
7-0.
Is there a,
Motion to waive second reading.
it's been moved by Alderperson Lash to waive second reading
Second.
and approve. Seconded by
Yes.
Alderman Fanouken. Discussion? Seeing none, I'll ask for a roll call.
Naylor?
Yes.
O'Leary?
Yes.
Jacobson?
No.
Fanouken?
Yes.
Lash?
Yes.
Snow?
No.
Ray?
Yes.
5-0.
So that is 5 of 7 for tonight's meeting, so that passes as a supermajority.
Thank you. Motion passed. Moving to communications. Alderman Jacobson.
No report.
Alderman Fanouken.
Just a couple of quick comments. First, the NIU Cares Day is this week on April 18th, so you may see a lot of NIU students out and about doing community service this Saturday. Also want to recognize the Cal Fire PD and Public Works for their efforts in Fairdale and Rochelle this past weekend. I know Eric was very proactive. As soon as the storm started, called in the troops and was ready to go as soon as the storm rolled through. So I want to commend you for that, Eric. Thank you very much. And that's it.
Alderperson Lash.
Thank you. Also on the tornado relief, I've never been more proud to be a resident of DeKalb County. Just the response that they are actually so inundated with donations that they are saying, please don't bring any more. So it's just a phenomenal response, and the way that we've gathered together to help those who need it was really, really a good thing. But along those lines, I also don't want people to forget that Rochelle was also pretty heavily hit. And there are at least 5 families in Rochelle who lost just absolutely everything. So I apologize that I don't have the link right at hand, but I know there is, I believe, a GoFundMe account for monetary donations for those families as well. So, you know, Fairdale needs it, and I'm so proud that we've responded so well, but don't forget Rochelle.
Alderman Snow.
No report.
Alderman Naylor.
Well, yes, definitely our thoughts and prayers are with all those people over in Rochelle and Fairdale, as well as all the other farmers and homes up and through the line. And that's one storm I guess I'll probably never forget, because watching that on television and seeing that was headed initially right for the heart of DeKalb, until it turned and decided to go northeast, they're just west of Rochelle. It could have been far, far worse on it. And certainly it is rewarding to see all of the response, not only from this community, but throughout. I think you listen to some of the Chicago radio stations and other agencies out there that are receiving great responses on that, which is really great to hear. Also, I'd like to congratulate our new elected alderpersons here for the coming next 4 years on it, and hopefully we'll see them here shortly. Likewise, compliment our police, fire, public works, everybody that has or is or will be doing and contributing to the tornado relief assistance out there. Also, I'd just like to comment with regards to our new library going up here on the north side of the downtown area. What a difference that's going to make to that area, and it's going to be a fantastic, great addition to the community. And had the opportunity to attend their column signing event there on Saturday, and it obviously is being well received already by the people, the community out there. It's a great addition. One other thing I just wanted to comment on too is to wish our DeKalb High School mixed a cappella choir group that's heading to New York, I believe on Thursday of this week, to compete nationally, being one of, I think, 11 groups that's going to be competing nationally, and hopefully we'll bring back the #1 trophy there on it. We had an opportunity to view their presentation, I guess it was last Friday night out at the high school, and for maybe those people that weren't there, but there was a good number of people that were in attendance, and great presentation, and you really have to hand it to some of the students out there, all of the very, very skilled and very fine artists on it, and you wish them well. Thanks. Oh, I should mention one other thing, though. On behalf of the DeKalb Education Foundation, you need to mark your calendar down for April 25th for their fundraiser out at the country club, their boot scooting barbecue. And I know many of our staff attended this in the past, and hopefully they'll attend it again. Is that right, Chief? Yes, Chief Lowry. Thank you.
Alderman O'Leary?
No report.
Thank you. I would note, add congratulations to the newly elected alderpersons. I understand Doug Johnson, County Clerk, will be certifying the election April 23rd. Anne Marie Gora, our City Manager, is planning orientation for those newly elected candidates, and we'll be doing a swearing in at the May 11th council meeting, at which time the new council members will be seated. I also will be placing forward a appointment of a city clerk to fill out the remaining 2-year term of city clerk at that May 11th meeting. So I'll consult with city attorney in terms of timing. That appointment may come at our next council meeting, but my intent would be to have that swearing in on May 11th. I would ask for a motion to recess for executive session, holding an executive session to discuss personnel as provided for in 5 ILCS 120/2C1, to discuss collective bargaining as provided for in 5 ILCS 120/2C2, and to discuss pending or imminent litigation as provided for in 5 ILCS 120/2C11. I'll come back to those.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
Can I do that?
Don't worry about it.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call.
O'Leary,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Lash. Yes.
Snow,
Yes.
Naylor,
Yes.
Baker, Ray,
Yes.
7-0.
Okay. I've got approval to move to executive session. I don't want to shortchange city staff. City manager,
No report.
city attorney,
No report.
city clerk,
No report.
assistant, city manager, Chief Lowry.
Just wanted to let you know in regard to Fairdale, the police department's still supporting the sheriff's office for security operations there, to protect the residents' efforts to secure whatever valuables they can find to prevent others who aren't supposed to be there from being there. And also in line with Alderman Naylor's comment, there's also a fundraiser in the morning on April 25th for the Child Advocacy Center. And that will be where myself and the regional police chiefs from NIU PD, Sycamore PD, and the sheriff from the sheriff's office will be participating in a pie
in the face, pie in the face event. So the donations will be
right.
accepted to Pie the Chiefs, but that will be in the morning of the 25th, starting at 10 o'clock. That's all.
I have apprised City Manager Gora that we've had contact from a FEMA representative who is interested in doing local disaster training, cross-departmental for the city, and we'll be passing that information on to the chiefs as it comes available. Finance Director. Chief Hicks?
I also want to thank Gilbert from NIU Weather. He was within a couple miles of that storm the whole way and was on the phone with us the whole time, so we knew exactly where the storm was at. He gave us ample notification so we could contact, like say, our off-duty personnel when we thought it was going to hit the city. You know, eventually it turned up and went north, and we were able to send our resources up there to assist them. And all in total, we sent 19 firefighters to Fairdale. They spent the night up there, and then we had spent two to Rochelle. So currently, we still have some equipment left up there, some light towers and ATVs, but I anticipate that back in the city shortly. So that's all I got.
Community Development.
I just want to remind everyone we have the P&Z Commission on Wednesday with 2 items on the agenda. One is a continuation of the question of the cell tower on South 7th. Because a time had elapsed, we did send another mailing to the residents in the 250-foot radius around the property. And then University Village's request for rezoning is also going to be heard again. The public hearing was continued. My only last item is, if people hear what sounds like might be an unusual rumor, I hope folks that will contact us to get things questions answered. I was asked today if it was true that Iron Gate was projected to be a subsidized housing project. And I think it's probably one of the highest end projects the city's ever approved. So if something doesn't sound right, I ask our residents to please go ahead and give me a call, and we'll go on rumor patrol. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. City Engineer?
No report.
Thank you. With that, we'll adjourn to the large conference room.
Oh.
So for purposes of the record, this is the reconvened public session of the City Council meeting of the City of DeKalb. We're recording here. We're recording here.
So you don't want me to?
No, you're fine. For April 13th, 2015. And Mayor, I think you were going to ask the clerk to call the roll.
I'll ask for a roll call of the reconvened council.
Jacobson?
Present.
Fanouken?
Here.
Lash?
Here.
Snow?
Here.
Naylor?
Here.
O'Leary?
Here.
Ray?
Here.
7 aye.
Okay. Is there a motion to reconsider ordinance the waiving of second reading of ordinance 2015-17?
This is the ordinance adopting the pay and compensation study.
Yes, I want to make a yes.
You want a motion to reconsider?
Motion to reconsider.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Alderman Fanouken.
So this would be a vote on whether or not we should reconsider that motion, not a vote on the underlying motion. So a yes vote means you want to reconsider, a no vote means you don't want to reconsider.
Yes.
Okay, so motion
Roll call.
to reconsider, brought by O'Leary, seconded by Fanouken.
Yep.
Okay. Fanouken?
Yes.
Lash?
Yes.
Snow?
Yes.
Naylor?
Yes.
O'Leary?
Yes.
Jacobson?
No.
Ray?
Yes.
Yes.
6 aye.
Okay.
So the motion to reconsider passed, so the council could now entertain a motion to waive second reading on the ordinance.
Move to waive second reading on the ordinance.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Alderman Snow. And I will ask for a roll call.
Just for
Discussion.
clarification, the numbers that we're talking about, we are not tied to these numbers from here on out? This is just for,
The changes that the pay and compensation study contemplates taking effect immediately would take effect immediately. So changes in pay ranges, for example. Changes for part-time employees would take effect over a 3-year period. The changes, change in employee compensation that's contemplated for January 1, 2016 would require future council action. This ordinance does not implement it. The allocation of funding for a merit pool, that would require future council action. So this ordinance, for example, it authorizes city manager to put together what that performance review tool is, but doesn't allocate funding that could be given out. That'd be subject to future council action.
Clear? Is there further question, discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask for a roll call.
Lash,
I would be first. Yes.
Snow,
Yes.
Naylor,
Yes.
O'Leary,
Yes.
Jacobson,
I'd like to have noted that I don't feel comfortable meeting without the press or with the public here and in the public eye, and I am refusing to vote so it can be entered as an abstention.
An abstention would count with the majority, just for the record.
I understand.
Fanouken,
Yes.
That's why I wanted it noted in the minutes.
Ray.
Yes,
6-0.
motion passes.
And the press will be contacted.
Yes, and
Yes.
the open meeting was not adjourned. So if the press left early, that was
Their
at their
choice.
leisure.
But the press will be contacted like ASAP, like we'll try to get a hold of somebody tonight.
Tonight or tomorrow, I don't have numbers for, I mean, I used to have Katie's number, but Katie's no longer with the Chronicle.
I don't think we have any further business for you this evening, Mayor.
Make a motion to adjourn.
It's been moved to adjourn. Is
Second.
there a second? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign.
Left the meeting early and did the vote close.
Motion carried.